Pressed the Let's Go Live button, which means we've got to wait for the stream to fire up all across the fruited plains of the internet, and then and only then can we go ahead and get started. And it looks like we're still warming up on all of the various platforms. If you don't know this, we do multi-stream. We're on Facebook and Twitter. We're even on Twitch, and YouTube always takes a quick second just to make sure that we're alive and well. But it looks like we're rocking and rolling, so we can go ahead and get started. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gruler. I am a criminal defense attorney here at the R&R Law Group in the always beautiful and sunny Scottsdale, Arizona, where my team and I, over the course of many years, have represented thousands of good people facing criminal charges. And throughout our time in practice, we have seen a lot of problems with our justice system. I'm talking about misconduct involving the police. We have prosecutors behaving poorly. We've got judges not particularly interested in a little thing called justice, and it all starts with the politicians, the people at the top, the ones who write the rules and pass the laws that they expect you and me to follow, but sometimes have a little bit of difficulty doing so themselves. That's why we started this show called Watching the Watchers, so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. And we're grateful that you are here and with us today because we've got a lot to get into. A little bit of a busy weekend, especially over there in the Middle East, and we're going to talk all about it. Joe Biden was out here this afternoon, giving us a breakdown and explanation about what happened in Afghanistan and where this administration is going in the near future. And so we got kind of some answers, but not a lot of them. He spoke for about 18 minutes. We're going to go through it. We're also going to poke around and take a look at what the rest of the media is saying. We're going to check out what the New York Times had to say, Washington Post, USA Today, and some of the others. And then also kind of go through Joe Biden's speech and then see how it might fit in the framework of the entire world, the globe. China is responding and some other countries are as well. So we're going to spend some time dissecting the Afghanistan debacle. Have already done a lot of that last week, but we're going to see what we can tease out of today's recent events. Then we're going to change gears and we're going to talk about what is taking place in New York. As we know, we've been talking a lot about the KeyToNYC. These are the vaccine mandates that Deblasio is rolling out starting tomorrow. August 17th is going to be the day that it rolls out, at least for an educational component. So they're going to be talking about these vaccine passports in New York City for about the next couple weeks, I believe it is, and then full enforcement is going to take place in September. And so what we're going to do today is the Deblasio administration there in New York City. They came out with this frequently asked question, some of these guidelines for what you have to do now under the new totalitarian regime where you have these two separate economies, one for the vaxxed, one for the unvaxxed. So we have a dictator, Deblasio, came out and is now telling everybody, all of the New York citizens there, how they can participate in New York City. If you're good, if you do what we say, you can participate in the economy. You're welcome for your liberty. Otherwise, you don't even come here. Don't even bother. We don't want you. So Deblasio, we're going to spend some time going through this frequently asked questions and see what we can tease out of that. And then lastly, a very troubling little bulletin came out from our Department of Homeland Security. The secretary there, his name is Alejandro Mayorkas, and he posted this bulletin on Friday as the whole world was watching Afghanistan crumble and sort of opining about how embarrassing this whole situation is globally. The Biden administration just kind of snuck out this little report talking about some problematic new extremists that the administration has identified. We've already talked a lot about these extremists, and they have all of these different labels like homegrown violent extremists. Okay, so HVE. Then we have the domestic violent extremists. Okay, so DVE. And now we've got a new one. So if you're keeping track at home, if you're playing bingo with all of the different forms of extremism that now exist, you're going to have a new one to add to your board. And so we've got a lot to get into. If you want to be a part of the show, I would love it if you chimed in and then dropped some comments and some questions here today. There's a good place to do that. It's over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com, where there's some people chatting away over there right now. We've got TOS Forever's in the house. Bumalickit is over there. I'm Not Gas. Want to Know. Speech Unleashed. Greetings to all of you. Justice Obsessed as well. All chiming in and talking over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. If you're a supporter there is a form that you can use to add some questions or drop some comments and leave some comment or criticism, whatever you want to ask in there. There's a nice big form that you can use, and so we can really get into some meat and potatoes here in the show. Also, shout outs over to you on YouTube. Big appreciations over to Tim Granville playing hooky number 1. We got NJ Pat 65, A Straight and Narrow, and we're also taking super chats. This one came in last week from Eddie Oliver, and so they'll pop up on the screen. If you want to show your support that way, we'll take those questions as well. All right, so without any further ado, let's get into the news of the day, shall we? Click that slide over right there. Afghanistan. We've been watching this debacle unfold. Some people call it a catastrophe. Some people call it inevitable, that this was going to happen no matter what administration was in charge, no matter how the United States ever sought to eject itself from this mess in the Middle East. Or some people are asking on the flip side of that, well, why did we leave in the first place? Maybe this was something that we should have had a stronger presence there. And so as we have been watching in almost horror and disgust the rapid pace at which the entire situation just crumbled before our very eyes. If you recall that in the lead up to this, we've talked about it here on the show. We're not going to do a post-mortem on all of that. But Joe Biden, Anthony Blinken, they were saying for a long time, in conjunction with all of our military intelligence, all of the generals, we're all over the media, this is not going to be a problem. We've got it figured out. We've got contingencies planned every which way. Then, as the withdrawal starts, we see a different story. We see this cascade of panic from our own embassy, from our own adults in the room who are now supposed to be in charge of this stuff. We're seeing scrambling. Troops were pulled out and then sent back in. And everybody, including people in the mainstream media, people who generally would be very favorable to the Biden administration, are left scratching their heads saying, what the heck just happened? I thought we elected the adults, the sophisticated people. I thought this was the administration that was supposed to regain America's standing in the world, because that orange Cheeto was so destructive to the country's standing on the global stage that only Joe Biden, only a man who could be in government for the last 40 years, only could he restore the beauty of America standing throughout the globe. And now it's not happening. Now we're seeing a very long list of people who are upset with what the United States has gotten themselves into and how they are leaving on the way out. So we're going to spend some time taking a quick look at what the other media had to say. Here is what the New York Times was chiming in about. Says that the Taliban capture Kabul, stunning U.S. as a 20-year effort unravels in days. They're even surprised about it. They say panic spreads as thousands try to escape. They say after a week under new rulers, Kunduz may be a hint of future. I think that's talking about Afghanistan. We have here for Biden, these are images that he wanted to avoid, right? So a whole front page, everything above the fold, Monday, August 16th. For posterity, we'll go through it from the New York Times. Not a good headline, not a good day there for Joe Biden and the Biden administration. Over here with the Washington Post, big headline from them, Afghanistan falls to the Taliban, the same Taliban that many people were saying for a long time had already been defeated. George Bush said that they were on their way out long time ago, and it's been sort of the same story indefinitely. Washington Post is acknowledging it, saying that militants face little resistance as they overtake Kabul, concluding a surge that far outpaced U.S. estimates. Begging the question, why is this something that the administration was not prepared for? The Pentagon rushes additional troops to Capitol aid in chaotic effort to evacuate the personnel. They say desertions and illegal deals accelerated the military collapse. So if Afghanistan collapsed and there were desertions and illegal deals, are we ever going to get to the bottom of that? It says, afraid for lives, activists plead for help. Biden takes a cold-eyed view of the debacle, which is a little bit unusual for Joe. He's old Grandpa Joe, very friendly. Him, Joe, yeah, we're just, just go-lucky, happy-go-lucky Joe. And now Joe's pretty stern. People are wondering what that looks like, what that about face was all about. President flees. Thousands clamor to board the flights. We're going to take a look at some of what happened there. Over at the Wall Street Journal, we have Taliban seizes power as the U.S. retreats. You see them rolling into Kabul just in a victory, taking control of the entire city. Fighters take control of the capital as the president flees and concedes defeat. Biden stands by troop withdrawal despite the criticism. There's a desperate rush to get out. They're saying that this was Saigon on steroids here at the Wall Street Journal. This was a quote from another person who was nearby. So this is not a good day for the Biden administration. And any of these Saigon comparisons, you may have seen them. We saw this picture over at the USA Today this Chinook helicopter flying over an American embassy in Kabul. This was the exact scene that Joe Biden said that he did not want to see. In fact, when people were asking him about this, saying there's absolutely no way that this is going to happen. Specifically, there's no way that we're going to have a helicopter that is taking people out of American embassies like we had in Saigon. And I know there's some little detail facts. Well, is it really the embassy and all of that? But the point here, it is kind of the same thing, right? This was a catastrophic collapse happened from like a Friday to a Sunday. Within a couple days, the entire city had been seized. And this was exactly what they said would not happen. Joe Biden was asked about this, said, is it possible that this could look like Vietnam, or could this be anything like that? And he said specifically, no, absolutely not. Well, why not? Because they have 300,000 well-armed troops. They've got an Air Force. They've got a lot of the infrastructure that any modern military would have. And so necessarily they'll be able to rebut any attack from the Taliban. Well, that's not what happened at all. We see here at USA Today actual photographs of a Chinook helicopter coming in and pulling people out of the embassy in exactly the fashion that Joe Biden said it would not happen. So Afghanistan falls, Taliban seizes the capital, government collapse, U.S. scrambles to evacuate as panic grips the Afghans. We have decades after 9/11, we have now a whole new set of new security fears. And so we're getting ready for that. We're already seeing them talk about the terrorists now. That boogeyman is going to be brought right back to life because Al-Qaeda is now congregating and they're accelerating all of their evil, dark plans. And so we've already got a pivot towards domestic terrorism that we're going to talk about here in the last segment on this channel. But we've also got now the resurgence of international terrorism. And so we're going to be seeing a lot of that, of course. We got to, make sure that we make all of our liberties that have already not been stripped from us due to the pandemic, make sure that those are ready and available to turn over to the government as soon as the new international terrorists become the boogeyman yet again. So we've seen a lot of this. U.S. citizens, they take, in Kabul, they're told to take shelter, so no preparation. We got U.S. citizens just like, hey, good luck, figure it out, find shelter. Airport is just completely ransacked. We have analysis here from Susan Page, says America's chaotic exit is Biden's big defeat. And so a lot of that, right? A lot of the people who traditionally prior, a week ago were, Joe Biden's in charge. Finally, it's a return to norm. America's back in the game. And then we see this just botched. The whole thing is completely botched. This was a picture from the palace. You've probably seen most of these. We'll just make sure we plug these in here just for posterity, for future generations, and for this sake. We have the Taliban. They're in the palace. They're sitting. This is the equivalent of the Oval Office, the Resolute desk there, whatever they might call that there in Afghanistan, and they're behind it. The Taliban, okay, so you've got that going. We've seen that. We've seen most of the imagery. There's a lot of troubling things coming out. This was, I think, earlier this morning, and this is a troubling scene. It's going to cut short, so we're not going to see anybody die. But you'll note that once this airplane does take off into the air, that there are people that we're going to see who were attached to it that then later fall off and plunged presumably to their death. Has not been confirmed, of course, to me. I think it's all sort of been presumed in the media, but we're not going to watch any of that, right? We're going to keep this stuff. So all of the gruesome stuff is not going to come into play here, but this is a scene. You probably saw this. This was from the airport. This is a U.S. Air Force carrier that is filled with people, and we're going to show a picture of that later on this segment, but you can see what's happening here. The entire runway is just filled with people who are, some of them are celebrating, I think. Some of them are cheering. Some of them are having fun. Some of them are scared to death and trying to get out of there. And so, we're watching this stuff, and it's easy for people to sort of, it's not my problem. It's not our fault. Well, I don't care anymore. Afghanistan is Afghanistan. And, the United States has spent enough blood and money and time and resources over there that people just say, well, I don't care anymore, right? This is all over, and so what? It's Afghanistan. And I'm just not so quick to do that. These are people who are trying to improve their lives. They're trying to live and not be killed. And so it's a sad thing what we're seeing here. But this is another government-caused disaster. Our government got involved in this, and they've been botching it for the last 20 years. This is the scene. All right, so sorry about that audio, quite loud, I know, but all right, so you saw just what happened there. Okay, they are literally hanging onto the side of the airplane, trying to escape as the Air Force is just pulling off. So not a good situation. That is the U.S. Air Force, right? This is like one of those scenes from a terrible sci-fi movie when, all of the people are sort of abandoning the spaceship and people are clawing to get into the escape vessel before everything explodes. It's not a good scene. It looks like the U.S. government is incompetent. It looks like there was nothing that was planned. We have a situation here where there's a lot of harm to that airplane, right? To the pilots, to the U.S. citizens who are presumably on board. And we heard from the media today, or from the administration today, that no, we planned for all of these contingencies. I mean, we had it all figured out. We knew what we were doing. And so there was some expectation that this could possibly happen. And so we were prepared for that. That's why we had all of the troops standing by, ready to go back in. It's sort of like, when you're walking down the street and you slip and you look like a moron and you get back up and you look around to see if anybody saw that. You're like, anybody see that? And you just keep walking about your business. Well, we saw it. Yeah, we saw all of this, right? We saw the flub. It's not okay for them to come back out here and say, well, everything's fine, right? We planned for this. Obviously, we knew this could happen. And so this is just going according to plan. This doesn't look like it's going according to anybody's plan. Looks like the U.S. Air Force is barely getting out of a zombie movie where they're trying to, escape the zombie horde. It is a catastrophe. It makes the U.S. look incompetent. And regardless of what you want to say about whether we should be in Afghanistan or not, it's embarrassing. It looks like a disaster because it is. Now, there are some, in all of this tragedy, are some moments of, I guess, more tragedy. Or if you want to sort of have fun with it, look at it with a little bit of levity. We have somebody from CNN, big Joe Biden network, a lot of fans over there. We have Clarissa Ward. It's funny that her dress code changed in literally one day. So Representative Vicky Hartzler posted this on Twitter, said her dress code in Afghanistan compared to today, showcasing how crushing Joe Biden's incompetence will be for the future of Afghan women. And so, I got to be honest, this woman is really impressive, the fact that she's over there right now and that she's still there. It's August 16th. And so all the prayers in the world to her. Hopefully she's doing well and her family's, at some peace because she's in the middle of a war zone. But, kudos to her. Got some serious cojones over there. And it says on August 15th, we see, right, she is not wearing a hijab. Then the next day, well, the city changed power, and now we have her in a nice hijab. So she puts on the outfit of the local environment, and that changed pretty quickly. Here is a closer up shot of this from CNN. This was a couple days ago, I think maybe yesterday, and then it all changes. This is a scene here where she's actually still sort of explaining this weird disconnect, saying, well, they're here and they're saying death to America, but they're actually pretty friendly.
They're just chanting death to America, but they seem friendly at the same time. It's utterly bizarre.
At the present.
So she's getting a lot of grief for that, for saying, it's utterly bizarre, because it reminds everybody of the, what was the other one? Oh, the CNN, fiery but peaceful protests back during the BLM protests during the summer of unrest. Remember all of those, where that CNN reporter was like, well, yeah, all of these buildings are burning down to the ground, but it's pretty peaceful. Nobody's actually killing me. So all of this other mayhem and destruction, don't worry about that. It's mostly peaceful. So kind of the same concept here with this Clarissa over from CNN saying, no, they're shouting death to America, but otherwise they're pretty friendly. And if you take a look at this screenshot, you can sort of see her disdain here. This image was, not to poke fun too much at her, but she has that face sort of like, I can't believe I'm here. I can't believe this is happening right now, right? She has that face. When I make a dumb remark to my, my girlfriend or anybody, this is kind of the face that I get from them. Like, are you serious right now? Are you... Enough, Rob. Come on, that's ridiculous. This guy over here is very happy about the situation. He's looking at Clarissa and he's saying to her, well, that's about right. Yeah. Yesterday you were here. You didn't have this hijab on, but now you're here. Now you have the hijab on. So he's very, very happy about it. He's sort of just looking at her just like, yeah, we're in charge now. It's hijab season, right? This guy seems like he might be enjoying it too. And so, CNN is learning to play ball with the new administration, the same people who are ranting and raving about, Donald Trump being a backward xenophobic monster who hates women and all of that stuff. Joe Biden comes in. This is the new situation in Afghanistan. So I hope they're enjoying that. It's who they voted for. All right. So enough of that. Let's take a look at what Joe Biden had to say. he gave a speech today. You may recall he was over at Camp David for a very short couple days. Apparently he was on a vacation, was supposed to be there through Wednesday. The Taliban, they're inconvenient. They didn't check his calendar. They didn't realize that he was out of the White House, out of office. And so they just went and did their insurrection, their seizure of a democracy. They just took it over. Joe Biden wasn't really bothered to really address that until today. And a lot of people on Twitter were saying, well, it's the weekend, he's tired and he's probably working really hard. And so give him a little bit of slack. So then when the boiling point reached fever pitch, what happened was the White House said, oh, well, we better get a statement out here. This is looking pretty bad. So they picked Joe Biden up. They flew him over to the White House. He talked for 18 minutes, took no questions, not a single question, turned around and just made a beeline right for the door to get out of there faster than anybody wanted to get out of Kabul. He's just gone, and he didn't want to even talk to anybody. And so a lot of people are scratching their heads about this, saying, well, that's a little bit concerning, because then he hopped back onto an airplane and went right back to Camp David, right back to his vacation. So we got about 18 minutes out of the man, and then he deferred the rest of this over to his administration. This is one of the most experienced politicians in our entire country. Right? He's been in office longer than I've been alive. And so now he is supposed to be guiding us with his steady hand through this crisis. And we got 18 minutes, not a single question. That's it. So you can criticize the decision to leave Afghanistan, whether you want to be there anymore or not. That's one issue. You can have a conversation about whether the departure, whether you agree we should stay there or think that we should leave. You can also have some problems with the departure. You can say, well, that was botched. It should have been done a lot more cohesively with a lot more coordination. And then you can even have another layer of criticism here. You could say his response to the botching is also pretty bad. So we're going to take a look at this. I'm not going to dunk on him the entirety of the speech. There are some of this that I actually like. He sounds very much like Donald Trump, or like somebody who is also tired of foreign wars, which I am very much tired of, right? I haven't been ever somebody who has been understanding of what we're doing over there. I've lost sight of what America's interests are, fighting for the Middle East, fighting for that little pocket of land for a long time now, and I think a lot of Americans agree with that. So Joe Biden comes out here, and now we can sort of measure him in terms of his leadership, right? The decision to leave Afghanistan, one decision on that. The decision about how to leave Afghanistan, another one. And then the response to the botch is another example where we can measure his leadership ability. And so we'll take a couple of these clips. I've got 3 clips. One's good, one's okay, and one's kind of bad. Let's start with the bad one first. This is where he's trying to blame Donald Trump, and this is logically inconsistent. This is why this is bad. I don't care the fact that he blames Donald Trump, but it's just logically inconsistent. It doesn't make any sense, because what you're going to hear him say is sort of blame the predecessor, blame Donald Trump. We've heard this a lot, that Donald Trump already put this plan in place, that he had an agreement with the Taliban. Donald Trump is saying now, well, but we had conditions before we were going to withdraw. We were going to make them meet certain markers, and we would have never left in the way that you left. And Joe Biden and his administration have been trying to say, well, our hands were tied. We were put into a box here by Donald Trump. He entered into this agreement. We had to honor this thing. And if we didn't honor it, it would have required us to go back to war and all of that stuff. So he goes through this little banter about blaming the prior administration before pivoting and saying, but it's the right thing to do. And he gives us a bunch of reasons as to why that is. So it's either he's upset that Donald Trump sort of forced his hand, or he's in agreement that Donald Trump was right and this needed to happen, and he's making it happen. So then I don't understand what the criticism is. So he's trying to have it both ways. To me, it felt like the speechwriter, somebody just had to put a little section in there to dunk on Donald Trump and to try to defray the blame a little bit. But we're going to see here why that is just not appropriate. Let's take a look here. This is what Joe Biden had to say this afternoon for 18 minutes.
When I came into office, I inherited a deal that President Trump negotiated with the Taliban.
Okay.
Under his agreement, U.S. forces would be out of Afghanistan by May 1, 2021, just a little over 3 months after I took office.
Yeah.
U.S. forces had already drawn down during the Trump administration from roughly 15,500 American forces to 2,500 troops in country. And the Taliban was at its strongest militarily since 2001. The choice I had to make as your president was either to follow through on that agreement or be prepared to go back to fighting the Taliban in the middle of the spring fighting season.
Okay, so you see what he's doing there, right? He's framing it to say, well, look, I really was left with no options. I had no choice but to honor the prior administration's prior agreement. And you can get into the complexities here, right? You can say, well, this agreement had conditions and that agreement had this and blah, 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 and the fighting season and spring and all of this crap. It's all crap, right? All of those excuses are garbage, right? We've been in Afghanistan for 20 years, right? Another year to secure a more competent withdrawal is like not that big of a deal in what, my humble opinion. It is a big deal, but when you're talking about these types of conversations between the administration and military officials to avoid this botching, I think that they would have agreed maybe another year, another 6 months or whatever it is, would have been appropriate. In other words, to use that as an excuse, I think is just an absolute joke. We know that the administration has rolled back many other Trump policies. Here's a quick look of a couple of them. If you go onto Google and just search Biden reverses Trump, put that in parentheses and quotes there, you'll see Biden revokes a Trump-era executive action on immigration, right? Huge issue. We have another one, executive order banning diversity, right? Biden reverses Trump, another one there. Biden reverses Trump policies on healthcare, abortion, COVID. That was in January. Biden reverses Trump efforts on TikTok. Okay, that was in June. Biden reverses Trump order barring immigrants. Okay, that was in May. Another one. Biden reverses Trump limiting U.S. nursing home, blah, 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 whatever. Another one. Biden reverses Trump changes bank anti-discrimination. The list goes on and on. He got into office and reversed everything. So for him to come out here and say, well, my hands were tied, it is total nonsense. They could have easily manipulated the agreements and secured a more favorable withdrawal. Whether you think that was appropriate or worth it or not is a whole separate conversation. But this was sort of a throwaway clip from Biden to just dump it back on Donald Trump. Okay, so that's fine. I think that's part of probably one of the less effective parts of the speech. It seems to me like he is trying to pass the buck to somebody else. At the same time, if you listen to the full speech, he talks a lot about the buck stops with me, right? It all stops with me. It's my decision. I double down on it. I stand by it. I confirm that it was the right thing to do, but my hands were tied. And it's also sort of a problem for me because the last guy put me in this position. Well, if it's the right thing to do, well, then why is that a problem? And you certainly did make some adjustments. You didn't follow his plan to a T, did you? You adjusted the whole thing. And so you are, as the president, responsible for that. And so to try to blame the last administration, I think was just ineffective, of course, though. But it is part of a Biden speech. You got to put in something to dig against the prior administration, including Donald Trump. All right. And so that was that segment. Let's take a look at this one. Now, this is where Joe Biden is doubling down on it, saying, I stand firmly behind my decision, and gives us a little bit of a breakdown as to what happened. Here he is.
I stand squarely behind my decision. After 20 years, I've learned the hard way that there was never a good time to withdraw U.S. forces. That's why we're still there. We were clear-eyed about the risks. We planned for every contingency, but
there it is.
I always promised the American people that I would be straight with you. The truth is, this did unfold more quickly than we had anticipated.
Okay, so you planned for every contingency, but it also happened a lot more quickly than you anticipated. So did you not actually prepare for that contingency then or not? Because if you did, it sounds like you kind of botched that, didn't you? Because you sent another 5,000, 6,000 troops back in there. If you had it orchestrated properly, I would guess that you don't have to go back and send more troops in there. So he goes out there and he's doing all he can do, right? What else are you supposed to say here other than, yeah, didn't go exactly as we thought, but still the right move. And so they're trying to paper over this thing. Now, where I think this is another area where criticism is appropriate is, again, regardless of what you think about the decision, regardless of whether we should be in Afghanistan or not, that's important, of course. But the bigger point is more about the environment surrounding these decisions. Okay, Joe Biden, Anthony Blinken, these were two elected officials of the United States government in the highest positions, the president and the secretary of state. They both told us, the entire country, in many of their press briefings and interviews that they gave before any of this stuff happened, that this was not a possibility, that it would not be a situation. Anthony Blinken said specifically it would not be like a Friday to a Sunday thing. It exactly was. Joe Biden said it wouldn't look like Saigon. It exactly did. It is still a debacle. We still have U.S. citizens and people who are still trying to board planes, and the administration has been basically asleep at the wheel over the last several days. So the question here, if you're going to be analyzing what happened, is where was this breakdown? Where was the disconnect between the administration and what was happening in reality? Because they told us something. So my question is, was the military and the intelligence community giving them bad information that they were not digesting, or that they were digesting and then regurgitating to the American people? Everything's fine. A withdrawal is going to work fine. The Taliban is not going to seize Kabul. The Afghan army is competent. Joe says, okay, thank you for the report, generals, and I'm going to go deliver that message to the American people. If that's the case, how can you be mad at Joe Biden over that? You can't. If it's the generals who are lying to him, who are lying to Donald Trump, who are lying to George Bush, or whatever's going on with the military or the intelligence community, that's not on Joe Biden. He's got to trust his generals and his intelligence community. And so that's a very important point. We have to decipher that. What is going on there? Where is the breakdown? Is it from the ground to the military? Is it between the interface between the military and the Afghan, the people? Is it between the military and the U.S. government? Are they all in it together and they're all just lying to the American people? What's going on here? Who should be held accountable for this? Because we have thousands of dead Americans. We have billions of dollars that have been just absconded and thrown in somebody's bank accounts somewhere all over the world. And the entire Middle East is now in catastrophe mode. So it would be good to know specifically where that breakdown is, other than just saying, well, gosh, shucks, any administration that was going to withdraw from this, it was going to be bad. Just happened to be me. I just sort of got the bad barrel in the Russian roulette. Sorry, I got the bad chamber there. That's not an appropriate example or post-mortem here. We got to figure out what happened. Is that going to happen? Are we going to see military generals or anybody in this debacle resign or held accountable for it? No, of course not, because we never do anyways. All right, we got one more clip here from Joe Biden. And Joe Biden is here now making a great point, making a very keen observation, something that I've observed with the Afghan leaders and some of the people there, apparently who were of the 300,000 people that Joe Biden was communicating to us we're going to be there protecting the country. Here is Joe Biden now laying some truth down about the Afghans.
So what's happened? Afghanistan political leaders gave up and fled the country. The Afghan military collapsed, sometime without trying to fight. If anything, the developments of the past week reinforced that ending U.S. military involvement in Afghanistan now was the right decision. American troops cannot and should not be fighting in a war and dying in a war that Afghan forces are not willing to fight for themselves.
It's hard to argue with that, folks. It's hard to argue with that. When we were talking about this last week, we were covering it. We were reading different stories of the Taliban almost being greeted as liberators, right? Because they could use their motorcycles again. They could use their little mopeds or motorbikes, because under the old Afghan government, they were not allowed to do that because those were vehicles that the Taliban used. Taliban comes in, a lot more freedom, a lot more liberty. They're not locked down anymore. And so they were almost greeted as liberators. We've got some clips here I'm going to show you about, they're kind of having a good time there in Taliban Afghanistan. So that was the last clip from Joe Biden saying Afghan leaders gave up. They did. The president was gone. I think they still don't know where he is. And so if your inner core, if the core of your country, the people who are supposed to be symbolically representing you, who are supposed to be the strongest stakes in the ground to make sure that the country does not get derailed, they just bailed, abandoned ship, right? It'd be like the founding fathers in this country. You'd have Madison, Jefferson, Washington, all of them. Oh, the British just landed. Washington and Jefferson, they all just go, oh, well, it's been a good run, everybody, but we're off to Canada. So long. See how long the rest of the country is able to hold it together. And so, that begs the next question. Joe Biden and all of the other presidents, all of these other military people, all of the bureaucrats that installed these leaders, these officials over there in the Afghani government and spent the last 20 years telling us how great they are. Oh, these are really good people. We trust them. they're primed to be able to bring their country, turn things around, and create a new democracy in the Middle East. They are our partners over there. What kind of character judgment do these bureaucrats have? Or do they know something that we don't know? Are they being honest with us? Or is this all just a rotten scheme and they're just out there paying lip service, talking up their useful ally in whatever grift they're being a part of? Because now it sure looks like that all of their judgments about these presidents and about these elected officials are all a little bit off, right? Don't recommend me, Joe or Nancy Pelosi or any U.S. officials currently who've been elected in the last 20 years. Don't recommend to us, the American people, the next leader of a free country, because you have a terrible recommendations. They're terrible. Your restaurants are bad. All of your movie recommendations are terrible. Your dictator representations are also all just awful. They're supposed to be very strong leaders there in Afghanistan, and they just got on the first plane out of there. So no thanks. We don't need any more of those. Now, Joe Biden was very, very quick to get out of the White House. Now, he gave his 18-minute speech, and again, we're sort of measuring the leadership response as a leader of a country, as the leader of America, the country that led the coalition against terrorism back after 2001, that put boots on the ground all over the Middle East for the last 20 years, that has a number of different allies in different parts of the world that we've been working with that still rely on the United States. You would imagine that at a moment like this, your president, the leader of the free world, would come out, spend a little bit more than 18 minutes talking about these issues, acknowledge a little bit more about what actually took place, why this was so problematic, and then give a clear opportunity to clarify some of the outstanding questions, right? The press has a lot of questions. We haven't heard from Joe Biden or this administration in the last 3 days. Now he's out there, finishes his 18-minute speech, and presumably he's available for questions, right? He's going to stand there and take some questions from the press. But Joe Biden doesn't do that. No, here he is on his way out. He hightails it for the door as soon as the speech is over. Here it is.
Diplomats and all brave Americans serving in harm's way.
I'm out. Pew! Gone with the wind. Just turns around, walks right out the door. Press is screaming like a bunch of hyenas. Hey, Joe, you kind of botched this whole thing. Your foreign policy is crumbling. And literally in real time, the American people have lost faith in the competence that your administration claimed to have. So maybe a couple questions? No. Slams the book. Teleprompter's over. Nothing else to read anymore. Certainly can't wrap his head around what's going on. So he just makes a beeline right for the door. And he's out of there. Bye-bye, Joe. Faster than they left Kabul. He's gone. So now we know he's going back to the Camp David vacation. Here he is. This is from the press briefing room, whatever, wherever this document comes from. The president delivered remarks. By 1 p.m., the president departs Washington, D.C., going back to Camp David. And a lot of people on Twitter are also noticing that Jen Psaki is out as well. She's on vacation until August 22nd. Very convenient. People were sending her emails, and they were getting the autoresponder. Oh, no. We're on vacation. Sorry, Jen Psaki's not available. Meanwhile, the U.S. military is doing what it can to save lives and bring them out of the country. Here is what Ian Bremmer posted over on Twitter. Says this is inside a U.S. transport that's taking off from Kabul, calling it extraordinary, right? This is what it looks like. And so for all of the people out there who just want to say, well, whatever, screw Afghanistan. We've been there for 20 years, whatever, forget about it. Let's take a look, right? I mean, there are... In this photograph, there are women and children, right? There's a young man right here, another young person here, a child over here. This child over here is drinking from a bottle. Kids, women, kids, just packed into this thing. It's a horrendous scene. It's a humanitarian crisis. This is on a U.S. convoy. This is something that the U.S. should have been prepared for. They're telling us that they were prepared. Oh, we had all the contingencies planned. We had it all figured out. Certainly doesn't look like it, right? They're going to be just sloshing around in an aircraft as they fly around to whatever their next destination is. And so then, the next, of course, question is, well, where do these people go? Or do we just bring them into the United States now? And now the United States is responsible for all of them in addition to that? And you might say, well, no, send the plane back, turn that around. But at the same time, the U.S. caused all of this, right? The U.S. created an environment where these people were relying on U.S. security. The U.S. just bailed. And so now, what do we do? It's a tough situation. That's why I'm looking forward to hearing your answers and your questions on this, because it's a complicated issue. All right, so moving on, what does the rest of the world have to say about this? We're going to get into questions soon, I promise. The Times of India is reporting that the Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan says that the Afghans have broken the shackles of slavery. Says that they seized power, and President Ghani fled the war-torn country. So the prime minister said that, yeah, I mean, they were in slavery, and now they've broken those chains. So the Pakistan government sounds like it is now aligning with the Taliban. The Chinese are having fun with this. The Chinese are saying, from what happened in Afghanistan, those in Taiwan should perceive that once a war breaks out in the Straits, the island's defense will come in hours, and the U.S. military won't come to help. As a result, the DPP will quickly surrender. So they are just poking, not fun. They are needling the United States, saying that, hey, Taiwan, you know your allies over there, the U.S., the people that said that they were going to protect you against the reunification between China and Taiwan, the same reunification that President Xi has talked about, saying that we're going to reunify in the next 10 years. We are coming for you, Taiwan. They've made that pretty clear. And so now the U.S., because of their inability to see things through, looks like an unreliable ally. Taiwan, maybe unlike Afghanistan, is a very key strategic interest to the United States, largely for their technological capacity, for the chips that they make there. So China knows that, and China is very quick to make sure that they wag their fingers in the entire face of the United States any opportunity they get. Do you remember when Anthony Blinken went over there and said, hey, what are you doing about the Uyghurs? They said, well, what are you doing about the BLMers there? And Anthony's like, oh, yeah, you're right. I guess we're idiots. And then also, now they're saying, Taiwan, the U.S., they don't have your back anymore. Look what they just did to Afghanistan. So that's not too good. All right, well, let's take a look over at some questions here from watchingthewatchers.locals.com and see what is going on over here. All right, we're going to pull up the questions. I think I saw a super chat come in there from Paul Bryant. Thanks, Paul. Saw that. No question on there, but I appreciate the support. All right, let's see what is here from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We've got I'm Not Gas says, don't worry. The UN wants to import at least 1 million Afghan refugees. I'm sure the cowards who couldn't even stand up to defend their homes for more than one day will be great additions to our country. Yeah, it's a great point, right? If they have civic values and virtues that are entirely different than the country, it makes it difficult to assimilate. Are we learning our lessons on that? If people don't want democracy, if America can't go over there and install democracy, is it a good idea then to bring people who don't want to participate in democracy, who don't understand Enlightenment ideals like the Bill of Rights and things like that, into the country and to try to acclimate them? Seems like you're trying to do the same thing in reverse. We have Deadmau5 says, everyone knew this ending was inevitable, but Jesus, effing, yeah. Out of all the possible transitions out of Afghanistan, this has to be one of the worst. Was this also Biden could try and time a photo op for the 20th anniversary of September 11th? Yeah, link to Switch getting unplugged in the Matrix. Yeah, let's see if we can grab this one real quick. What is this here? Not like this. Not like this. And, oh, it didn't have it, but she drops dead right there. Yeah, not good. Yeah, good. Welcome, Deadmau5. I know you just signed up. Welcome to the community. Great question. Sharon Quidney says, Afghan was a nightmare for the Russians before it became the U.S.'s nightmare. For all those who hate the U.S., including those in this regime, that's most of them, it's a great triumph, a day for rejoicing. Oh, I hope that's not true, Sharon. Seems like it's pretty terrible all around. We got Donald Trump is here, says the Dolma Agreement was a wonderful deal for peace in Afghanistan. It was an orderly withdrawal of the troops. But Demented Joe is even bigger than mine, his ego. He needed to withdraw by May 1st and then delayed it to 9/11. The order of withdrawal, to shred the documents, the order to evacuate equipment, evacuate everything was problematic. Sleepy Joe should retire. Yeah, Donald Trump said so. Yeah, Donald Trump said that, I think officially even. Sergeant Bob is here, says Biden spent 40-some years in politics and never was a leader. Now with his mental capacity, it's only worse. Very predictable. As the Brits would say, this is a right good cock-up. All right, maybe he could just assign this to Kamala. Well, yeah, I mean, look, Joe is well, first of all, Kamala is very, very good at not succeeding. So she'd be great for this because it's already not a success. And so put her in charge of this and she'll continue to make sure that it is not a success. She's got a very good track record with the border. He put her in charge to go solve that thing. Not going to happen. Obviously, it's actually getting dramatically worse. And so, yeah, I think Afghan is already basically beyond repair. So, yeah, we could put Kamala in charge of that because it won't get any better. We also have LT13 says, did you see the pic of Biden at Camp David? Yeah, doxed some people. He was wrong for what time would be in Moscow. The only times that would have matched up were in March. Yeah, so let me explain this. LT13 is saying there's this image. Joe Biden, it was a wild image. The White House posted this. I didn't clip it, but the White House posted this over on their Twitter, official Twitter account. Joe Biden is over there at Camp David. They have a screen up in front of him, and they've got all of these different people on there. Kamala Harris is on there. She's in the Naval Observatory, and there are no books behind her. So people are saying, well, that's weird. Is that a real set? You know, she's been in that Naval Observatory there for a couple of months now. You'd imagine she'd put some books back there. What's going on with that? Is this a fake image? And Joe Biden is sitting there. He's got a notepad open and there's nothing written on it. So he's got this pen and he's just like going to write in this like blank notepad, talking to some people on the screen, even though the microphone on notifications are not on. What LT13 is talking, so meaning maybe he can't speak to them. And so what LT13 is talking about is the clocks up there on the image are not necessarily right. So Moscow, the difference between Moscow and London, it should have been like a 3-hour difference or whatever it is. And it's only a 2-hour difference because that was pre-daylight savings time. And now it's, whatever. And so somebody did the math and the clocks don't match up. And so now people are saying, is that even a real picture? It's probably, folks, just that the clocks are wrong because our government is that incompetent. Yeah, why would the clocks be right? Nothing else is right, so there's nobody to change the clocks. So that's probably all it is. But I love those conspiracy theories. Love it. It's a lot of fun. And Joe Biden is basically absent, so I think it fits. And he's writing in a blank notebook. What is he going to be writing there? Oh, okay. I have to check on this for that general. What are you talking about? Okay, anyways. Kennetit on Local says, cannot imagine anything more incoherent or incompetent than the Afghanistan withdrawal debacle. How many hours before the media starts to ignore Americans caught behind enemy lines who will no doubt be tortured, murdered, or both in favor of blaming the only policy of Trump's Biden didn't reverse immediately? Yeah, I know. It's a good question. I think that you're probably going to see a lot of sweeping away of the follow-up here. Media is just going to move on with this. That was the signal from the speech today. Joe Biden came out. No, I'm doubling down. Don't ask me about it again. Don't talk about it again. Move on. That was the signal. Not taking questions. This is a hard line in the sand. Get in line. And they probably will. The Taliban is here. Says, thanks, Joe, for the heavy equipment, planes, and giving Afghanistan on a silver platter. The Taliban's here. Hopefully they're supporting the show. Sharon Quidney says, anything coming out of the mouths of this regime you can count on as being as lies start to finish. It's all about Kabuki. Now the Taliban is back. ISIS will be back. And my guess is they're going to be talking about domestic right-wing extremists and white supremacists. Yeah, they're actually called now, I think, racial and ethnic violent extremists, Sharon. We're going to talk about that in the third segment today. We've got Chop is in the house. Says there's been some talk that the Taliban made deals with political and military leaders in Afghanistan and that they were either bribed or convinced to desert. There were either massive intelligence failures on the part of the U.S., which would be bad, or they knew about it, did nothing, which would be worse. Yeah, I am hopeful that there's a lot more digging that goes on as a result of this, but I'm not optimistic about that because you need the media to do the digging. You need politicians to do the digging, and the Republicans are also asleep at the wheel, right? They don't care. Lavoisier is here, says, I'd like to formally congratulate the militias in Afghanistan for winning a war against a country with F-16s and nuclear weapons using only AK-47s and IEDs. Yeah, it's actually pretty amazing. And we spent billions of dollars, lost thousands of lives, and it's just kind of back to the way it was 21 years ago, isn't it? NY Renal MD says, the only difference between Kabul and Saigon is that we haven't heard from Henry Kissinger yet. He is still alive, so we may hear from him to whitewash this foreign policy debacle. Yeah, Kissinger's still, he's still alive. Want to know says, Rob, do you think it would be a good idea to send Kamala, AOC, Almar, and others over to Afghanistan to make sure that the BLM and the rainbow flags are going to fly over the new Afghan capital? Yeah, probably. Probably also to make sure that they've got their dossier of pronouns in place. Says it would help to prove its new Taliban stay till the mission is completed, help to prove there's not prejudice there. Stay at the U.S. Embassy till the mission is completed and hand out little pink hats with Madonna. Yeah, that's great. Want to know. Exactly right. Yeah, the pronouns, look, if Governor Kardashian. What's her name? Jenner. If Governor Jenner can't win in California, maybe she can win with the Taliban over there. Yeah, that might be good. We have tight tinfoil hat says, look at the squirrel. While we segregate the by POC anti-vaxxers from their food, causing food riots in NYC and San Francisco. Oh no, shootings. Joe declares gun a public health emergency. Joe ignores the Second Amendment rights. All guns must be accounted for and turned into public health authorities. Tyranny in the back door. That was from Tight Tinfoil Hat. A lot more questions here. Sharon says, you say it looks like this government is incompetent. If it looks like a duck, etc., how much more proof would anybody need? It's a good point there. Three Girlies is here, says, as a Navy brat, ex-Air Force wife, this Afghanistan withdrawal is an unbelievable failure of the political class. Has completely ripped apart my friends and family. Wow. I've had a very emotional weekend. Saigon on steroids does not cover this hell. I do not believe we should be there, but this was done wrong. What is worse, the Afghan people did not deserve this, right? Seeing them claw for any chance for freedom and saving has just added to it all. Biden did not have a plan at all. He needs to be removed, and a whole lot of top leaders in our government need to be fired. Add to this the long impeachment list for Biden. Yeah, I agree with you on that, Three Girlies. I think that, if we had a real country that really had, honor and integrity, and people were held accountable, you would see resignations already, right? You'd see these generals who we hear about being the most honorable, sacrificial people on the planet that, they just are nothing but selfless, botching this and shoveling BS down all of our throats for the last 2 decades. You'd think that they would have a little bit of shame, but they don't. They all just sort of, deflect the blame. Joe Biden comes out, well, it is what it is. Media is going to say, well, it is what it is. And a lot of people have lost limbs, lives, brothers and sisters. And it is a horrific thing to think about that, all of this was sort of done without much purpose, without much oversight. It was way worse than we expected. And there are a lot of people that got rich off this, and there are a lot of families that lost loved ones. And if we had a justice system, you would say, well, maybe we should go find that money. Maybe we should go get every single dollar of that back that was stolen from this country and pay it to the families who lost loved ones as a result of this government catastrophe. Is that ever going to happen? I hope so. Next up, we have here, Leafy Bug says, when I was young and stupid, I thought the regime change wars were effective. The only way to prevent another 9/11. Yeah, I bought into that too, Leafy Bug. I was younger when 9/11 happened when I was 16, I think. And so I agreed to make the world a better place. Then people jumped to their deaths from the tower to escape inferno caused by religious fanatics flying planes into buildings. Today, people are jumping to their deaths from U.S. planes to get the hell out of Dodge to escape religious fanatics. Is the world a better place? I'm not so sure, Leafy Bug. I don't think so. I think the world is going the wrong direction for the time being. We have Aircraft Mech says, rumor has it that the footage of the C-17 being taken over was actually a Trump rally. They're coming to thank Trump, I guess. We have over here, No Question says, looks like a good time to drop a couple radioactive freedom seeds. That's not appropriate. There was no name on that. I suspect I know why. Refanilator is here, says, this is pretty bad, but the administration concerned at all about the women and children in Afghanistan. First stream live since joining Locals. That's from Refanilator. Refanilator, tell me if I'm getting your name right or wrong, and I'll do my best to correct that. And welcome to the community. I just saw you signed up. Your name is on the board there. Thank you for that. I'm grateful that you're here. Joe Biden said that they're concerned about women and children, but I don't know because the actions don't match the rhetoric, do they? Kenny 1B says, as someone who does some contingency planning for certain parts of the government, there really isn't all that much planning. Capabilities are generally way overblown. Hunters here says, Dad screwed up. He's not as incompetent as me, but it's okay. He'll fix it. By the way, Robert, do you know where my laptop is? I think that prostitute that we talked about last week, I think she has it. Red-pilled convict says, ladies, get one of those at the CNN merch store. Yeah, get the CNN hijabs now. The CNN Taliban hijab. Oh, my goodness. Let's see here. Thunder 7 says, I miss the Orange Cheeto. The Taliban were afraid of him and Pompeo. Orange Cheeto told them that if they break the Doha withdrawal protocols, he's going to send vengeance. Biden changed the date. U.S. snuck out, left military hardware behind. Taliban, they got new Humvees, trucks, shiny new drones. Yet another colossal failure by China Joe. There's a good comment there, Thunder. We have Coucher says, what is it going to take to have someone resign? And for God's sake, who is running the country. I don't know who is. Three Girlies is here, says Clarissa Ward changed her dress because she was interviewing the Taliban leadership. She went to Bagram Air Base, saw them taking over all the ammunition. They were happy to answer her questions so it would get out to the world. She changed so they wouldn't kill her. Yeah, I understand that, Three Girlies, and I maybe shouldn't have poked fun about that, right? She's doing what she needs to do. She is there with CNN. I think she's brave as hell for being there, right? She's on like death's doorstep with one wrong move, I would suspect. But maybe she also has a little bit of armor there because she is a journalist. She is with CNN, and the Taliban knows that they can use her for their propaganda, right? They want to show this victory, this seizure of Kabul, and they're going to make sure that that is being broadcast everywhere. And of course, the media is happy to oblige with that. Why shouldn't they? They're the new government there. That's who's in charge. So the media has to report on them. We have over here from I'm Not Gas says Biden's first real crisis not being handled very well. I agree with the decision to pull out, but looking at this, it's crazy. They had absolutely no plan. Did they expect the Taliban to just sit nicely and wait for everyone to leave? I don't know. I'm not sure really what they were expecting. Speeches here says, funny how Russia, China, and even the Middle East don't dare do anything when Trump was president because they knew Trump would act. Just the threat of Trump was enough. However, the whole world knows Biden is weak, won't do anything. So that's why they're all acting up now. I think there's a lot of truth to that. That was from speech. We have the Taliban also here says, demented Joe, you're so incompetent. Now we're going to have sex slaves. And we're going to execute people and implement Sharia law. Josh Halgering is here, says the Afghan people had 20 years to decide if they really wanted to reject the Taliban. That's an entire generation of people. When the Taliban came, they dropped their rifles immediately. No more American boys need to die there. Drones and cruise missiles can do the work from here on out. Yeah, I agree with that, John. I agree, right? Look, if the people themselves are not willing to stand up and defend themselves or take this opportunity, I agree. I think that enough already. And that's where we're at. We have B. Thorne says, the incompetence of Sloppy Joe's administration is on full display. His address was pitiful. It's just sad having an absent leader, but I'm wondering, besides the newly discovered DHS threat, what is this misdirecting our attention from? I just finally joined up on Locals. I try to watch the show every day. Keep up the good work. That is from B. Thorne. Welcome, B. Thorne. Thankful that you are here. It's a good question. And I was asking myself the same thing. My first instinct is, well, if we don't have the military industrial complex over there in the Middle East, do you think that those contractors are just going to go away and that this whole institution just disappears? No, of course not. It just comes right back over here. It just comes back on home. They've already been transitioning this anyways. Joe Biden said, one of the biggest threats, I think it's, being debated alongst climate change, but we also have white supremacy, domestic violent extremism, we have homegrown extremists, and the list goes on and on. We're going to talk about all of that, but if the country is buckling down here at home, if people are trying to flee the country or move states, and we have a lot more resources to move from the international terrorists to the new domestic terrorists, well, you can just see where this is going. And I don't doubt that for a second, unfortunately. Mustafa is here, says, thank you, America, for my brand new Humvee. My cousin Mustafa got a new Fortune. Oh, we've got the Taliban. The Taliban is infiltrating the show. Donald Trump says, Joe Biden, don't blame the train wreck on me. You broke the government yourself. Next, we have Sharon says, oh, please, I can hear the cheering and yelling. And yeah, man, of the mic, cheering and blaming Trump for anything and everything. That's from Sharon. Nadarb is here, says, the photos of the Taliban in the offices look eerily similar to some of the photos that journalists just happened to take there during the take to the Capitol chaos. How did the Taliban get into Nancy's office? Not so much difference in the levels of security with this and that day. Many similarities. Yeah, it is. It is kind of similar. It's like they were able to take over the entire city in a couple days. They were able to take over the Capitol building here in a couple of hours. And so, yeah, maybe the security states, maybe Afghanistan was a little bit more secure than the Capitol building on that day. What a joke. John Halgren says, when someone says the truth is, the next thing they say is very likely not the truth. Did I say that? We have Ghost Gunner says, Rob, why would the military care about this withdrawal? Last I checked, this isn't purging Republicans from the armed services or brainwashing people with critical race theory and LGBT propaganda. Yeah, that's true. I think that, yeah, I think, didn't General Miley, one of them said something about wanting to understand white rage, something like that. I think a lot of the country is pretty enraged over how this happened. Don't know if it's only white people who are upset about how the country handled this, but maybe they are seeing more of it. Maybe that's what they're going to refocus their efforts on. Anybody who's mad about how badly the military botched Afghanistan might be exhibiting some white rage, might be a libertarian, might be anti-government, might need to be monitored and surveilled by the Department of Homeland Security. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's a good point there. That's from Ghost Gunner. Next up, we've got Lauren S. says, hey, Rob, I have to give it to Biden on this one. Americans shouldn't be fighting and dying in a war for another country that won't fight for itself. That's from Lauren S. I don't disagree with that, candidly, right? I think that Biden is right on that mark. We have Kenny 1B says, Biden ignored his intelligence briefings on the Taliban. Decision is based on ideology and ignores reality. I'm still waiting for some confirmation on that. We have the last villain that says, me and my ex-soldier contractor sat in my sister's living room 2 months ago and divined this scenario. Why couldn't the top brass? People are trying to give him a pass for this epic fumble. We needed to leave, but that scene at the airport was eerie as hell. Full apocalypse. Do you think that he should have put Kamala out in front of this? In front of what? The airplane? Yeah. I mean, she could have settled that down. She went down to Guatemala and wagged her finger in all the Guatemalans' faces and said, don't come. So she should have just been out there in Afghanistan and said, hey, Taliban, don't you come into our airport. Because I think that's her only solution. I don't know what else she can do. She hasn't done anything else except talk, and poorly at that. Next up, we've got John Halgren says, the Taliban obviously bought millions of doses of vaccine. COVID disappeared in Afghanistan without the CDC intervention. Yeah, that's the other question, is why didn't the CDC just... the CDC should have just extended the eviction moratorium over the embassy and sent the Taliban a memo that the Supreme Court said that, or the Office of Legal Counsel said that that's no problem. And the Supreme Court hasn't ruled on it yet. So, yeah, they can just see. Sorry, Taliban. Rachel Walesky over from the CDC said, you can't kick us out because of COVID. And by the way, put your masks on because this is offensive. We have over here, TOS Forever says, after seeing the women and children in the airplanes, it makes more sense. We take women and children out first. Those were fathers running beside the plane knowing their family is safe. So might be Biden is short because they are bringing people in who support the Constitution. Well, you have a lot of faith, TOS Forever. I like your optimism on that. I've got some doubts about it, but we'll see. Yum Yum says, Taco Bell. Okay, I can't read that. Okay, we have Leafy Bug says, the U.S. military is the most effective fighting force in the world at tactical and operational levels, almost always betrayed at the strategic level. It effortlessly wins the wars it is tasked to fight, yet slowly loses the periods of peace it is tasked to enforce. Once more, we see the folly of these prolonged engagement. It is bad enough that the military is repeatedly dishonored by the people in D.C. responsible for these disasters and debacles, many of whom still make bank from their policymaking. For every soldier that returns from these misadventures in a casket, several more come home and take their own lives as a result of what they went through. The loss of these lives are a price the people who sent them into harm's way are willing to pay. Yeah, they are. Yeah, because they have no skin in the game. There are no consequences for them. It's not their son. It's not their money. And everybody else has to foot the bill for their incompetence. It's offensive. Baloha says the 25th Amendment was trending at number 13 today. I have to say this, though. I believe this is elder abuse with Dr. Jill at the forefront. I don't like to defend him, but Joe has been abused since the announcement that he was running for president. Yeah, he is not there, right? I think he's been gone for a long time. And I don't like to say that, right? It sort of feels mean to say that, but you can see it in his eyes. Even today when he was speaking, he loses the teleprompter sometimes, and you can see it in his eye movements. You can see when he sort of loses it, and then he gets it again, and then you can see his eyes, the little micro expressions. He's a couple brain cells away from not being able to do that, in my opinion. I'm not a medical doctor. Now, Sweet Potato says, even though the Biden admin is ruining America, you have to take a step back and appreciate the blessings of living here. I can't imagine the fear of the women being treated as lesser and the real fear of being trafficked in the situation. Prayers for them. All those images and video of the tarmac are heartbreaking. Yeah, I completely agree with that, Sweet Potato. It is a sad thing, right? We have to sort of remember this. Even though it is a catastrophe, even though America cannot be the basket for the entire world, to serve the entire world, it is a sad, it's a humanitarian catastrophe. It's a sad thing. I feel for the people over there. I feel for the people who have sacrificed to go and make that a better place. It's a bad day. It's not good. We have Donald Trump says the Afghanistan withdrawal highlighted how big human stupidity is. That is talking about Joe Biden. Okay. Over here we have Scott Morrison says, here in Australia, Scott Morrison said that so he's going to enforce lockdowns. We have another question here from Josh Sesko says, with less assets tied up in Afghanistan, we'll be better equipped to support Taiwan. That's another good point. Little geopolitics there. Anki Woe is here. Let's see. I think that's on the next segment. So we're going to get to that here next. Tinfoil hat fell off. Look over here. Okay. We've got a couple more questions, and then we're going to move on to the next segment because we spent a lot of time on this one here today. Aircraft Mech, last question here before we take a look at the super chats, says, once the Taliban is brought here, a few southern visitors won't bother anymore. That's a horrendous thought. Want to know says, Rob, you need to be nicer to Kamala. She's the next president. True poll numbers are down because she's a woman. I know. I'm sorry. I'm a chauvinist. I know. Trump wants her as the president after Biden resigns. All right, let's take a look at some super chats over from Just Cows. Says, Rob, did you see Biden's Afghan crisis fix? Eat some chocolate chip. Sorry, I'm behind on the segments. That's from Just Cows. Yeah, I mean, he's back at Camp David. He's probably got a whole gallon of ice cream over there at Camp David. Thank you for the super chat, Just. We have a DG McBride says, note to CNN, this is what an insurrection looks like. Okay, this is when you take over a country and you seize control of the government and now you run things. It's not when somebody takes a podium and walks it into the foyer of the Capitol building and then the government resumes their operations about 3 hours later. Little bit different. And DG McBride is helping to illustrate that for us. Super Iron Bob is here, says, the admin attempted to move the change over outside the fighting season, employ the other side would rightfully distrust. Yeah, okay, so yeah, Super Iron Bob giving us a little bit of the military inside baseball going on. And so great questions. Love all of those coming over from watchingthewatchers.locals.com where people are chatting away. We got Pinkies here now. We've got I'm Not Gas. We've got Bumma Lickit all having conversations over there along with John Delar over at Locals. Over on YouTube, big thank yous to Super Iron Bob, Doug McBride. We had Just Cause and others who supported us with the super chats today. Really do appreciate all of that as well. All right, so enough with Afghanistan. We're going to change gears now. We got to talk about what's going on in New York City. Before we get there, well, we're going to get there. Yeah, all right. So, next segment. The key to NYC, Mayor Deblasio's new brilliant idea for vaccine mandates. If you get the vaccine and you comply with the new program, you get to participate in New York City. You get to participate in all the fun things that you're used to as an American, like going places, doing things, meeting people, eating food, enjoying music, and the list goes on, but only if you're vaccinated. So we got these like little two tiers of systems that we have now in this country. So we have one for the people who are in the in group, and the other is you're not participatory anymore. You don't get to join in on the New York City fun. Thanks for playing. Go get your shot like a good little peasant, and then come on back once you followed orders. Then, and only then, are we going to let you participate in our city. And so we've talked about this for a long time. We've spent some time going through the domino analogy that New York City has regularly been the first domino to fall, and then all of the other cities and all of the other states follow shortly thereafter. We saw this back during the season 1 of COVID pandemic when New York got the big wave. They started murdering all of their senior citizens, and then they started to try to sort of export their philosophy on how to govern your state to all of the other cities. Same thing's happening here. New York City started their key to NYC, the Vax Pass. That went over to LA. Now it's landing in San Francisco. And the list goes on and on. Like a disgusting virus, it's going to continue to permeate throughout the rest of the country. And it's still subject to some questions. We're going to take a look at what exactly is going on here because Mayor Deblasio came out and gave us this today. Frequently asked questions. Says that we're going to be going through and giving you some guidance now that the Key to NYC launches tomorrow, August 17th, with outreach and education. So the Mayor de Blasio comes out and says, we're going to roll out this new program. All of you people there, private business owners with private employees and all of this stuff, a new program's coming out. And you might say, okay, well, I want to continue to maintain my business. How do I run my business now with these new rules? And Deblasio says, well, don't worry about that. We're going to get the memo to you so that you can comply. You're a good business owner. You want to follow the law, follow the rules. So Deblasio comes out and says, here's a new list of orders for you. And this was published on August 16th. And it goes into effect August 17th. Okay. And so kind of not much time to comply or to make any of those adjustments, but that's okay because actual enforcement doesn't start until less than a month later on September 13th. So we're going to go through this. These are the frequently asked questions on when COVID is required and how this whole thing works. It's a little long, but we're going to fly through this. And I want to show you a little bit behind the scenes about what he's talking about. So COVID, vaccination mandates, what types of proof is sufficient? We're going to start kind of at the end of this document. Deblasio comes out and says that sufficient proof can be in one of the following forms: the NYC COVID app, the New York State Excelsior app, any official vaccine record, or a photocopy of any one of these following vaccines. You can see the list down here, right? All of them, many of them you're familiar with. The types of proof, anything that comes from the FDA or the World Health Organization. So those are all going to be acceptable. We're going to take a quick look at these apps because Deblasio is very excited about this. They're got a lot of new technology there in New York. And so they give us this one, the NYC COVID Safe app. It doesn't look so good, right? We've got 3.2 3.2 rating here after 67 ratings. So just under 3.5 stars. And it's kind of a garbage app, everybody says. Looks like this. You upload a copy of your vaccine, you take your photo, upload all of this stuff. It's basically like a copy and paste app, but this is what it looks like. Not much in way of design. Users not particularly happy about it either. They say, that's a glorified camera app. It doesn't validate the record at all. It says, surely you are joking. This is the scene of the first season of Silicon Valley where somebody blah, blah, blah. Over here says, while I applaud the internet, the execution here is pretty bad. Great that it exists, but it seems like it's of limited value. Why? In 7 days, when you're fully vaccinated, you have to, okay, so, right, some people are unhappy about it. Some people say, well, it's pretty good. It's a good start. Let's stay safe. One more step towards a safer community, easy way to carry your proof, date function. Okay, so, some people are very excited about this. They get to put their little vaccine documents in their phone and, oh yeah, I'm vaccinated. Look, hey, yeah, waitress. Yes, look how vaccinated I am. Great. So that app is terrible. And apparently every single person in New York City is going to have to get this. Otherwise, you're excommunicated from society. You don't get to participate in the economy if you're non-vaxxed, folks. It's not allowed anymore. Mayor Deblasio said that specifically. Unless you get this crappy app that doesn't work. But if you don't like that app, that's okay. There's another one that's even worse. It's this one. It's called the NYS Excelsior Pass wallet. And this one is a 2.8 rating, 1.3 thousand ratings. So a lot more, and it's a lot worse. The other one was 3.2. This one now is 2.8. So it's not even good. But you can see it's number 4 in health and fitness because people who live in New York are all freaking out. They got to go buy this thing. And it's another terrible app. Same thing. Right? Upload your vaccine passports in here. Stay nice and organized with all your vaccination records. And it's got nice little QR codes so you can show your waitress and you can all, exchange your medical information just on the fly. I'd like a coffee. Oh, I know you would. But first and foremost, I got to see your papers, ma'am. I can't give you this coffee unless I know you're vaccinated. And ma'am there says, oh gosh, I've been so petrified about COVID anyway, so happy to do it. Pulls out the little, here you go. Oh my gosh, we're 2 vaccinated people. This is such a beautiful moment. Thank you for making the community safer. And that's what's going on in New York City. Kind of a weird thing. We have over here, we have a more disappointment, just shame out of this app. It says, so very, very bad. I'm usually called Les. Les is unhappy. It says, my first name is misspelled Leslie. We also have needs a lot of work to be useful. Useless down here. If I could give it no stars, I would. No records found. No help. Didn't work. No way to troubleshoot. Right? Excelsior Pass not working. Gives false info. And the list goes on and on and on. So this thing goes into effect tomorrow, and nobody can actually use it. So you have to make sure you're backed up. If you're a doctor in New York City, I'm sorry, doctor just was reading Dr. EMB. The doctor is in the house, Dr. EMB. I was reading that. Good to see you, Doc. Said that, thank you for that very generous support and super chat. Really appreciate that. But you don't get access to the economy. Use one of New York's loser apps and you still don't get access to it. Doesn't work. You can't get access to anything. Doesn't pull up your record. You want to go buy the coffee? I'm vaccinated, but I can't prove it to you. So you got to bring your card around. If you're in New York City, be extra cognizant of that. Now, how does this work? We're going to go through these rules and actually apply some of these things to some specific pictures of restaurants in New York City, and we'll see how it works. These are the rules that came through from Mayor Deblasio. What types of entities need to ask for proof of vaccination? Who does? Everybody does. Staff need to check. Anybody needs to check, any staff and visitors at all of these places. What spaces are considered indoors? And we're going to have some fun with this. Now, this is very complicated here. You can see that they're trying to give us some guidance. We can take a look. This is an outdoor restaurant, and we're trying to decipher, does this fit the rules? It says that indoor spaces are defined as those having 3 or more walls. Okay, we have something we can start off with. It has a roof or overhang. Okay, and 3 or more walls. So we're getting some rules that we can tease out of this. For our purposes, the following are considered outdoors and do not need vaccination. So now we have to decide, right, in this top part of this paragraph, this is what is considered indoors. These are not considered indoors. So these are outdoors now. Structures on a sidewalk or roadway that are entirely open, and an outdoor dining structure designed for individual parties, so long as it has a dome, like a COVID dome, then that's allowed. So we're going to go through these. These are the rules. We're going to play with them and see how we can apply them to some facts here. But it says what types of indoor entertainments are required to comply. It's basically everything. Right? Basically everything. Professional sports arenas, indoor stadiums, convention centers, museums, galleries, aquariums, commercial events, gardens, movie theaters, concert venues, adult entertainment, casinos, exhibition halls, billiard halls, recreational game centers, all of that stuff. Everybody has to comply. Okay, so now everybody has to comply. Let's take a look at the rules. So here we have a picture from a restaurant in New York. I just Googled restaurants in New York and picked a picture. Amaranth Restaurant. Now, it says, indoor spaces are those that have a roof or overhang and 3 or more walls. Okay, so Amaranth Restaurant has a roof and it has an overhang and it has 3 or more walls inside the restaurant, but there are no walls outside of this overhang. So I don't think that really applies, and there are no structures on the sidewalk. So I'm not sure what would happen here, right? This looks kind of dangerous. This might be a pro-vax situation, meaning if you're sitting here, looks like according to these rules, you gotta have your vax pass because it's a roof or an overhang and 3 or more walls. We have this and here. So it's not really indoor. It is indoors because there's no structure on the sidewalk. You see how complicated this is, folks? We're just analyzing the rules. If it had a structure on a sidewalk, then that might make it outside, but because there's no structure here, I think it's hard to tell. All right, over here, same rules, but we have a different restaurant. Let's do this analysis now. We have the same overhang according to New York City, so the regulators, the COVID police are going to be out there taking a look at that. Okay, so indoor spaces have a roof or overhang, so that's got it, and 3 or more walls. So we know there are walls on the inside of the building, but are these walls now? Okay, so 3 or more walls now, because those look like mini walls, kind of like pony walls. And okay, so this would be considered inside according to these rules, right? This has 3 walls and an overhang. So boom, it falls into that category. You are COVID max, you have to comply. Looks pretty simple. Structures on a sidewalk with an entirely open side facing the sidewalk would be outside. So that doesn't apply. So it fails. How about over here? Now, this is a closer example of the COVID bubbles that we can see. Apparently, New York is doing these. We've got these like little bubbles, like dividers in between all of these spaces. Let's see if this might be sufficient. An outdoor dining structure designed for individual parties, like plastic domes, so long as the dome has adequate ventilation for air circulation. Okay, so I mean, I don't know. I think that's subject to debate, but there are no roofs or overhangs here, so that must mean that is, in fact, not inside. And these are structures kind of outside, and it is open facing on the sidewalk. So, hey, there you go. That might be sufficient for New York. I think this one, though, is probably the best. Now, this one I think is probably the best because we can analyze it here. It says a roof or overhang, but this isn't and. This is and 3 or more walls. So this restaurant does have a roof or overhang, but you'll notice it doesn't have the 3 or more walls. It only has the 1 wall on the back end, and it's missing walls on the side, and it doesn't really even have a wall that's supporting the overhang. So I think, folks, that's kind of the right way to do it right there. Yeah, so those are the rules now. And so that's what Mayor Deblasio is requiring of restaurants and other different facilities out here to figure out how to do their business. Have to go through that analysis. So, that's one mechanism to do it is just to buy those pillars, and then you'll be compliant with the COVID vaccine mandates there. So kind of a lot of enforcement compliance costs that the restaurants are going to have to go through. But Deblasio doesn't care. So it's just figure it out. If you want to do business in New York, figure it out. All right. He says, what types of food establishments are going to be required? Well, all of them, really. Anything that's a part of the organization, restaurants, bars, coffee clubs, anything that's a part of New York's restaurant grading program, whatever that is. Now, what you'll notice is this starts to get pretty dicey when we get down here. It says, so before we get there, it says dining establishments in hotels, colleges, universities, cafeterias, all have to comply. Nightclubs, coffee shops, bars, everything. Any business that operates indoor seating at food courts, comply. Any business that provides on-premises catering services, and grocery stores and food markets, folks. You do not get to go into a grocery store if they offer indoor dining, on-site eating. Okay, if that happens, if they have a little place to go have a sandwich or to sit down and have a drink, which I think all of them do, they got to check for your vaccine passport before you go in there. So people, according to this document, are required to comply with the KeyToNYC, grocery stores and food markets, bodegas and other food retailers, if they offer on-site eating areas. So you might have people going to buy a gallon of milk and they can't get in because they're not vaxxed up. If an establishment offers only takeout or anything like that, then they have to block off all of the indoor dining so that you can't even see it. What types of fitness establishments are required to apply? Basically all of them. Standalone gyms, fitness centers, hotel gyms, fitness centers, CrossFit, plyometric boxes, all of them. Group fitness classes, any 2 people plus an instructor. So basically any time that you're going to get out there and do any type of physical activity, boom, it's included. Got to get vaxxed up. Also applies to certain facilities, except some of these don't have to do it for pre-K through grade 12 schools because obviously they don't get vaxxed. Senior centers where they're eating and things like that, they live there, so they just have to get vaccinated. Different community centers, child care programs, and those types of things. Now, when Deblasio was out there today unveiling this horrendous plan to everybody in his city, this is what he posted. This is the key to NYC. This is what it unlocks. All of this stuff. If you get vaxxed, then now all of these things that you used to be able to do that were once just by default your liberties as a born American citizen, like going to the movie, going to the arcade, going to a cafeteria, a nightclub, a bar, an event, a restaurant, a gym, a pool, all only available to the higher tier citizens. If you are not vaxxed, well, you don't get access to that. Thanks for playing. Now, how do they verify this? Who must display proof of the vaccination? Employees, patrons, interns, volunteers, all of them must display proof of this. Businesses may keep a record of people who have previously provided proof of vaccination rather than require it every time. So now, if you have a regular customer, you don't have to check every time. You can just sort of write that down, and then you're going to be good to go. What about individuals who are under 12? Well, it doesn't apply to them, but they can wear a face mask. Are individuals allowed to use a bathroom or a locker room to change clothes without showing proof of vaccination? Yes, you can, as long as they wear a face mask and socially distance. Do I need to check for proof of vaccination for vendors? No. So if you're a business owner and you're just buying stuff and people are coming and going into your business, you don't have to pin all of them down on their vaccination status. They can just come and make your deliveries of your food without checking that. So this is really only for people. It's not really about sort of preventing the transmission of the virus, obviously, because you've got kids who can come and go. You've got vendors who can come and go, suppliers who can come and go, people who are picking up takeout and food and delivery and all of that stuff. So if it were really about that, right, you would make sure that you're checking those people as well to make sure that they're vaccinated. But it's not. It's about you get access to the New York economy if you play ball, if you follow their demands. Less so than about the virus. It says, what about performers or at indoor events? What about professional athletes? Only the New York City professional athletes have to show the Vax Pass. Any other professional athlete or person accompanying the athlete does not need to provide proof of vaccination. A lot of Hollywood people, a lot of big wigs there in New York. And so if they're not from New York City, they are exempted from this, but not you, right? If you're just an everyday citizen, you have to comply. As long as somebody who is exempted, who's a professional athlete who's just coming in, exempted, they're good to go. But all of the other citizens, the little people, you've got to get vaccinated and prove it. A couple more slides here. What if an individual refuses to show vaccination? Any individual who fails to show proof or refuses to do so may not enter except for a very quick and limited purpose, like using the bathroom, picking up food, paying a bill, or changing in the locker room. So now you're going to have a bunch of people, duking it out, bickering about this. Well, I can't let you in. You're not vaccinated. Well, I just need to use the restroom. Well, I can't let you in. But DeBlasio said you could. When entering a venue for such limited purposes, they must wear a face mask and maintain 6 feet. All right. They can, on the vaccine cards, it's got to have all this stuff, first name, date of birth, all of that. Do I need to verify that it's real? No, you don't. What if someone presents a fake card? Call the Attorney General's office. And the list goes on and on. Is there required signage? Yes. Any establishment covered must post a sign that notifies employees and patrons about the vaccination requirement. So you're a private business owner, and this freaking guy comes out and says, you got to post a sign up there. The sign must be at least 8.5 by 11 inches, at least use a 14-point font. So Mayor DeBlasio gave you as a business owner now a new homework assignment. You got to go and print out your little, print it on a sign and slap it up there in order to do business in his city. It's his city now. It's not yours or the citizen city. These are new regulations, and that's how it is. How is this going to be enforced? Well, inspectors from various city agencies will be enforcing these requirements beginning on the 13th of September. All inspectors, no matter which agency they are from, will be inspecting for compliance with the same requirements. Are there penalties for non-compliance? You better believe it. A $1,000 fine. Repeated violations may result in increased fines or other enforcement action. And if you have customers that don't comply, well, you can just go take this conflict resolution thing. All right, so, New York City is basically dead as far as I can tell. I had a very nice live stream with Good Logic. His channel is Good Logic, and he is somebody who is very close to New York, lives about 11 miles from there. We had a nice conversation last night, and he told me what's happening in New York. Everything looks boarded up. Basically, the city is dying, and it is a sad state of affairs. If you missed that interview, it is on his channel. I'd encourage you to go check that out. So it's a sad thing that's happening there. And we'll see if this continues to spread throughout the country, just like a lot of other bad ideas from New York. All right, let's take a look at some questions over from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. I saw a super chat here come in from Brody Z. Says, collapsing a local economy, step one, limit everything. Yeah, I think it's pretty obvious that something like this is going to have very, very long-lasting effects for the city of New York, and that is a problematic thing for people who live there. Want to know, says Rob, can your info be scammed? Sounds like the first step to chipping. That's from Want to Know. I'm not sure specifically what type of info you're talking about. Miss Lucky is here, says, is DeBlasio going to write a book like Cuomo about all the good work he is doing? He might make a lot of money. I don't know. If you listen to the media, they're sort of fawning over him. Like this is a big, glorious, brilliant new idea. The NSA is here. It says, hey, New York residents, please install the app. We are totally not going to spy on you. That's from the NSA. You can trust the NSA. They're good. Lorenzo Greasy Bottoms is here. Says, last year, liberals wanted to punch Nazis. This year, liberals want to see everyone's papers. How ironic. It is interesting how that flips a little bit. Very quickly, too. We have Sergeant Bob is here, says, Nazi Germany had Jewish people wear a yellow emblem. Why not just have New York City wear a big yellow C, showing that they are COVID spreaders? Easy. And then they could be beaten in the streets. Yeah, they could be beaten in the streets and just sort of, segregated into the camps because they are the malcontents. They are the people who don't follow orders. And so they need to be re-educated. I'll see you there, Sergeant. We have a soul Soul Viking says convenience to hold immunization status or even a grander form of coercion. Truly an abuse of human rights, allowing autonomy. I agree with you, Soul Viking. I think it is so problematic. But we have people clapping like seals as it unrolls itself all around us. African Americans have the lowest vax rate in New York City. This is coming from Thunder 7. Deblasio has a black son. Will he be a part of the racial segregation taking place now? And what proof of the Nazi leaders showing to see if they've been jabbed? Pfizer and CDC employees are not mandated to get vaxxed, and many of them are not getting injected. How can the Dems get away with this? Well, they're in charge. They control the White House. They have, for some weird way, they have, some influence with the Supreme Court. They've been asleep at the wheel. We also have them in control of the White House and all of Congress, both chambers, and the media. So they're doing what they want to do. John Halgren is here, says, anyone excited about NYC and this key idea, skipped history class? This is absurd. Why don't we have a tuberculosis app? It kills more people every year than COVID does. How about a mosquito app? Did you put on your repellent? Those suckers kill 1.5 million people a year. This is shameful behavior. Yeah, I mean, all sorts of different things, right? I mean, what if people just said, well, you engage in risky behavior and we just don't like this. And so we're just going to segment you out. You're too dangerous. And you can start putting people in those different camps pretty quickly. And you start to really divide people by pitting them against one another, especially when it comes to these situations. It really is reprehensible, and people are just really excited about it. I don't get it. Nadarb says, I couldn't find the first app, but the second app has 2 versions. Both have 2 trackers, Google Analytics to collect data on your usage of the app, and 6 permissions. 2 of those permissions are rated dangerous due to the camera permission and a permission that can modify system settings. Either way, I'm not downloading an app unless it is FOSS. No trackers. Sorry, Billy Boy. This is the report here from Exodus Privacy. Let's take a quick look and see what this has to say. All right, so the Excelsior, yeah, here it is. This is brilliant. NYC Excelsior Pass, 2 trackers, 6 permissions, source from Google Play. Permissions here, camera, internet, wake lock, right settings, bind. We have signed by. Okay. Yeah, so very interesting stuff there. Thank you for that. Yeah, it's, I guess that's from Nadarb. I guess they want the rest of your medical information at some point as well. Paula MK is here, says, I got into a discussion about vaccine and mask mandates with someone who gave me the Schwarzenegger line. Your individual rights are relevant when it comes to public health. Wasn't the Constitution created for this very reason? Well, my question on that automatically would be, what is your limiting principle on that, right? Where does that ever stop? Because you could, theoretically, you could extend that to any sickness anywhere. And then that just leads to constant totalitarian society, doesn't it? Because you can extend that indefinitely. All right. Anyways, wasn't the Constitution created for this very reason? To dictate that our individual rights are not irrelevant because the government says so. I looked through the Constitution, found the 9th Amendment to be applicable, since SCOTUS had previously stated that personal health care decisions are included as unenumerable rights described in the amendment. But wondering why SCOTUS is not adhering to this now. Why is no one bringing this up in lawsuits? It's a good question, Paula MK. I am certain that we're going to see many, many new lawsuits, that people are going to be filing this stuff all over the place. There is a local attorney here in Arizona who does some employment law. And so, I sort of defer a lot of these cases out to employment lawyers, because I've been getting the same questions. What are the legal bases for challenging these mandates? And quite frankly, folks, candidly, I do not have any faith in our courts to adhere to individual liberties on this debate. If any court, most courts are going to take a look at this, and it's going to be a balancing act between individual rights and liberties and public safety, well-being, government obligations, government liability, being in compliant with the rest of the in-crowd. And I don't have any faith that judges in this country are going to just start finding in favor of individual liberties here. There's that dichotomy, I can't imagine, favors the individual. We've already seen this here. We've seen businesses sue the government for totally legitimate reasons, in my opinion. And the courts just come back out and say, well, no, they're the governor. This is the government. We don't know what else to do. The only thing we can do is just shut you down because we have no real answer. It's the easy answer. And they just upheld it. So I think that's probably going to be, how the courts go for the foreseeable future, and plan accordingly. Sergeant Bob says, how about converting old school buses to restaurants? That's a good question there, Sergeant. It has a roof, it has several walls, and so I'd have to pull the rules back up. But if you have a school bus, I would just say just drive it right out of New York and never look back. It's probably the better idea. Falling onto line says, do you think the Afghanistan thing isn't a diversion from the fact that a large majority of the unvaxxed people are of color? What do you think will get our groceries in New York City? Do you think that the 2020 summer of unrest was bad? Watch out for the fall of 21. Hungry people do extreme things, include rioting and looting, then the guns, then the confiscating, suspension of Second Amendment rights. Joe just ignored the Constitution last week. Robert, this is locals, right? Free speech. Read the questions and the comments. Meow. So it is locals, but we're also simulcasting on YouTube. So we got to be a little bit careful still. Eventually, locals will be the platform, but we're still transitioning over there. So we're still sort of multi-streaming, and I got to be careful. The Anticus Prime says, and people will just keep going along with this stuff. You know, we've seen this over the past year, really leads to credence to the fact that there are two types of people in the world. There are those that will, gosh, I can't read. Aircraft Mech says, well, this is just great. If the pandemic and the closure of small businesses wasn't enough, let's go around and cripple the remaining businesses that are open by encouraging people who don't want to vax just to stay home and dine. Yeah, it's going to have a very, very cascading effect on all small businesses. TOS Forever says, what happens when health does not allow for the vax for reception or a person that has natural immunity? What another debacle to unbuckle. Interesting that a baker has to bake a cake for what the baker cannot relate to, but you cannot eat or buy groceries unless you allow the government to make you an addict to the flu. Yeah, right. We're seeing all sorts of contradictions here from certain political ideologies. LT13 says, what is the law that goes along with this? King Deblasio can just come down with this? What is the code the police use? So LT13, I think what he's going to do now is issue an executive order, and that is the law, right? It's his executive order using the power, the caretaking power of the government, the general welfare clause of whatever, authority he has under the Constitution of New York or New York City, wherever he's drawing his authority from, he's just going to do it by executive fiat. He's just going to pass an order, and that's going to be it. And everybody's going to comply. Nobody voted for it. They voted for him before the pandemic hit, and he's just been modifying things however he wants to do, which is pretty much in sync with the rest of the federal government. All right, we have Want to Know says, so a lawyer has trouble figuring out these complicated rules. Why can't the rules be simple? Rob can make more money this way. How high can the walls be? Slated, or fabric walls? Did the COVID floated up? It just floats up and away. Maybe out an exhaust vent. Yeah, I think we should put people in front of wind turbines. Just get away with the walls. Just get away with the roofs. And just put, those big, you see at the side of football games where they just are cooling all of the players down. They're like, 6 feet tall and they blow like aircraft turbines. We should just put those in people's faces everywhere they go and just give them like soup and spaghetti and see how that works out for everybody. No COVID. And we'll have some nice dining experiences. It'll be pretty funny. We have another one here says, come on, Rob, bow down and submit. If everyone will just vaccinate, they won't have to learn these rules. Vaccine is the key to our freedom. People believe that. Deadmau5 says, Deblasio only has a few months left in office. Is there a chance that Eric Adam nullifies all these COVID restrictions since he seems a little more, sane? I don't know who Eric Adams is, Deadmau. I'm sort of an outsider jumping into New York politics. And so I apologize if I don't know who that is. But yeah, I think Deblasio is sort of on the way out, right? It's like, let's go out with a bang. I mean, he's eating cheeseburgers in the middle of a pandemic when people who are overweight are a lot more likely to have severe consequences from COVID. And he's cramming French fries and cheeseburgers in his face during these press conferences, rather than telling people, hey, go exercise. Why don't you get up and do some push-ups, go around the block, go spend some time out there just walking in the sunlight so you get some nice disinfecting sun rays. None of that happened. It's stay home, lock your face up in masks, and just sit there until the government says it's safe. And by the way, when you do come out, you're going to have to follow all of our rules. Otherwise, you can't engage in the same economy that you used to be able to get into. Scott Morrison of Australia said he is for freedom and the Afghan people, yet he's for sending troops and the Gestapo to enforce the lockdowns. Well, isn't that ironic? That was from Scott Morrison is a Nazi. We have Three Girlie says, this vaccine pass is only going to last as long as the businesses are able to stay open and pay their taxes. So will the police or government worker enforce these rules when they aren't getting paid? Also, anyone sitting outside right now will have to figure out something different when the weather changes. Looks like Walmart, DoorDash, and the food delivery services are going to be the only ones that can survive these mandates. Yeah, I agree with you on that, Three Girlies. I think that probably some of that is by I would have to say design. I asked Joe yesterday on his channel why people aren't just standing up, right? Why aren't the New Yorkers just saying enough already? Right? Vote this man out, demand something else happen. And the response was very sad. It's just people just left. They just decided it's not worth it. It's not worth the fight anymore. And probably the end of the city, according to Joe. We have Lauren S. says, let the bribing begin. So that's another thing too, right? That my sort of response to all of the vaccine stuff, the vaccine mandate stuff, is I think enforceability is going to be the big problem here. They can pass all the laws in the world. They can key to NYC, whatever. They can send all the inspectors out, and people are just going to say, okay, whatever. As soon as the inspector leaves, it's back to business as usual. They're not going to be able to enforce this. And so once they see what a joke it is, and once everybody's laughing at it, they'll have no choice but to sort of just phase it out and try to cover for their ineptitude. No doubt says, did he relax the sign permit fees required to post a sign? Probably not. Is that a $200 sign permit or more? Good question. I don't know. Any exemptions for that there? And NYC says, there's another question with no name. Going to jump over that one. Want to know says, seems like the keys to U-Haul would be more useful to leave. I see what you did there. Want to know. I like it. We have Speech Unleashed says, so this policy is supposed to help prevent COVID spread, but there are exemptions for certain people. So how does that prevent the spread of COVID? It's already been proven that vaccinated people can still get and pass on COVID. Plus, never heard there was a minimum time frame necessary for COVID to transmit to person to person. The NY policy makes zero sense unless it is all about control. And I think you nailed it there, Speech Unleashed, which is really what it's all about. Deblasio came out specifically and said that this is to incentivize people to get vaccinated. That's the purpose. It's not about stopping COVID. It's not about eliminating the virus. It's not about saving lives. It's about getting people vaccinated, which I think you could say that arguably, would result in people having their lives saved if you wanted to speculate out that far, right? But presumably at this point, the people who are choosing not to get vaccinated have made a decision on that basis, right? A medical decision. They think they're healthy. They think they've had it. They think they've got some natural immunity. They think that they can survive it, and they don't want to get it. Maybe they've talked to their doctor, and that's the decision that they've made. So in that case, now the government from New York City is penalizing people who've already made a medical decision. That's legitimate. So it's about control. It's not about COVID. Kareem is here, says, they say they are blocking non-essential services. The problem is essential is all about how long you can go without it. Water can wait a day or two. Dentistry, you can wait several weeks. Even arts, or years for dentistry. Even arts and culture ends up being essential. Just imagine if we did not have any of that over the past 100 years. Do you think our society would have functioned well? No, I do not think so. No, I think people should be free to engage in economies. That's part of one of the fundamental liberties that we enjoy, but not anymore. Vienticus Prime is here, says, watch the movie Rollerball. There was a great line in there, quote, it seems a long time ago people had to make a decision between having freedom or having nice things, and they chose comfort. Also, the little things in that movie will make you think about a lot of the stuff you see today. Yeah, it's a lot easier, rather than getting mad at your government, to just go buy something on Amazon, right? Rather than saying, this is offensive, and what they're doing is they're inflating my money literally out of my bank account. You just say, well, what am I going to do about it? So I'm going to go buy the new game on whatever. And that's going to hold you over for the time being. A couple more. Jeremy Matrita is here, traveling around the country, Jeremy is. Hey, Rob, I still believe there is something wrong with mixing vaccine issues with being allowed to participate in society. By the way, only been in Georgia a day and already have been warmly welcomed. I'm not being facetious. I got a rental car upgrade for being polite, got many hellos. I still have faith in my fellow Americans. Never liked the humidity though, but I will live. That's right. Good to see you, Jeremy. Thanks for the update. Traveling on over, Jeremy posted in Locals that he had some travel issues, airport problems, but he made it and he's there and he's doing well. Thank you for the update, Jeremy, and thanks for keeping us apprised of what's going on. Good luck to you. Safe travels. We have over here, Sweet Potato says, in Washington State, if you don't get the vaccination and you don't use one of the exemptions, medical or religious, which aren't automatic, by the way, then you may not qualify for unemployment. Pretty clear message that unvaccinated people are being shunned from society, trade, and everything. We are turning into your Cuba story where you will have to dine in the underground. Yeah, you're going to have to get your bootleg groceries. All the unvaxxed people are going to be like, hey, you got some beans? You got some potatoes? Yeah, we got a whole unvaxxed colony just growing potatoes underground over there. Come get some. We have next, our last one. Thunder7 is here, says, I want to be there when the newly hired woke cops try to hand out tickets to black citizens. Yeah, see how that goes. Yeah, if the police law enforcement institutions have already been completely degraded over the course of the last 12 months or so, the legitimacy, the faith in those institutions has been eroded. What do you think this does? When you're a business owner trying to put food on the table for your family and you have some bureaucrat as a investigator. Excuse me, Mr. Gruler, are you adhering to the COVID policies here? I know we just shut you down and all these problems we're causing for you, but now we have new mandates for you. Oof. Not okay. All right, we have a couple super chats that came in. Brody, we got that one. We have Andrew Passman says, if they really cared about our health, there would have been a vaccine for a lot of the public bathrooms I have been in. Yeah, I know, those public bathrooms. Especially if you're on a road trip, you have to stop at one of those gas stations. Those are rough, but they kind of turn you into a tougher person, don't they? You have to get in there, do your business, get back out, safe, with everything intact, nothing troubling going on. It's like a little mini war zone. Got to get in and out of there faster than Kabul. We have Ditka's Bears is here. Whoa, with a big super chat. That is says impeach 46 and minus 46 the VP. You know, I'm seeing a lot of calls for that out there, and the prospect of Vice President Kamala Harris just makes me just feel a lot of different ways. Probably going to happen because Joe Biden is having a difficult time reading the teleprompters. It's getting worse day by day. Thank you for that very generous super chat there, Ditka's Bears. We'll see what happens. Look, if they can impeach Trump twice, you can justify an impeachment for Joe. We have Dr. EMB. Is back. I haven't seen Dr. EMB in a long time. Dr. EMB was around many months ago when we were new with the show. Says, thank you, Robert, your team for your intelligent analysis and dedicated work on researching all of these issues. I really enjoy your show. Thank you, Doctor. I appreciate you being here. It's good to see you back. It's good to see the name back. Says, I was very saddened to learn that an Emirates plane could not land to extricate 100 children, including the 4 to 6 Afghani female teenagers who are world renowned for having invented some very intricate and high-level robotics. No STEM careers for them. You know, yeah, it's those stories that really, you know, it's hard as a nation to just abandon that. 4 to 6 Afghani female teenagers who are world renowned for having invented some very intricate and high-level robotics. Lost. Teenagers, right? They grew up in an Afghanistan that was safe because the United States was there for 20 years. 16, 14, 13, 12, their whole life. The United States has been there. U.S. picks up, the whole world changes. Who knows what happens to those girls? It's a tragedy. It's a very sad thing. And, you know, in the emotion of the tragedy, of the withdrawal, of whatever, of the victory, if you're Joe Biden, there, this is great. No, we planned for this. Everything's orchestrated. Got to remember that these are human beings we're talking about. Don't want to let the politics disassociate us from our humanity. No matter what side is doing the acting, it's immigration, if it's the Afghanis, if it's China. These are human beings, and we can't lose sight of that. I know it's very easy to join a team and just spike the football against the other team, but we got to keep that in mind. These are human beings we're talking about. All right, and that was from Dr. EMB. Those are some great questions over from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. I think we had a couple more. Let me get these real quickly. Rad says, this is a virus. It will change. We can't be locked down forever. Or can we? I think they may be trying to do that. We have Mike Cervantes says, so is China going with the enemy of my enemy is my friend? Yeah. I think China is doing whatever they can to just needle this current administration, and they're doing a pretty good job of it. All right, and so that's it for the questions from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Thank you to everybody who is chiming in with all the great questions, chatting away over there. We've got Radase, we got Speech Unleashed. Mr. Global Man is in the house, along with Pinky2 on YouTube. Shout outs over to Too Legit to Quit, M. Miller, Peach Time, and Clinton Noel. Thank you, everybody, for making the live stream as fun as it is. All right, we've got one more segment on the show today. Long show, long Monday. Busy day, a lot of activity going on out here. So we're going to get into the final segment. Homeland Security has identified yet another group of extremists. Can you believe this? There are so many of them. I know it's hard to keep track of them all, but fortunately, Alejandro Mayorkas, who is the secretary of DHS, put it in writing for us. And so we're going to take a look at this document. You can see this is a National Terrorism Advisory System bulletin coming out from your very, very trusted, very loyal, very reliable Department of Homeland Security. You'll notice this came out Friday, August 13th, right in the middle of the debacle as it was starting to unfold in Afghanistan. And so they like to kind of slide these things out on Fridays. You know how they do that? All the bad news comes out on Fridays. It's like, hey, Hunter Biden stuff, Fridays. You know, anything that's problematic for administrations, Fridays, because they know that the American public is checked out. Everybody wants to go and start enjoying their weekend. So they do this stuff on Fridays. Pretty standard. Doubly disturbing, though, was that the rest of the country was focused on something else, so many people just missed this entirely. Friday, August 13th, now, we have a new National Terrorism Advisory System bulletin. Going to be issued August 13th, going to stay in effect until November 11th. So we've got several months of this now, of, warnings, new alerts, new terrorism, And this was before Kabul fell. This was on Friday. Kabul fell on Sunday. And so now, I guess we're going to have a whole nother set of terrorism coming out. So we've got all of the international terrorism is back on the menu, boys. So we're going to be able to deal with that boogeyman for the foreseeable future. On Friday, though, they're directing our attention back towards domestic terrorism, which we've already spent a lot of time with this administration talking about. So let's go through this memo and make sure we can make some sense of it. It's going to start off with an introduction. You'll notice here that it says the Secretary of Homeland Security, which is this guy. His name is Alejandro Mayorkas. So don't let them hide behind these labels, okay? It is this man who is issuing this new National Terrorism Advisory System bulletin, saying there's heightened threat level across the United States. We continue to face diverse challenges. All of this is coming up because of 9/11 and also religious holidays that could be catalysts for acts targeting violence. So we're going to look at both of those. Specifically this one, what religious holidays are they talking about? Remember, we're going from August 13th to November 11th. So we're going to take a look at those months, see if we can identify what these religious holidays they're talking about. But he says specifically, these are threats. They're posed by domestic terrorists. We've already seen a lot of that. They're engaged in grievance-based violence, whatever that means, as though there's violence that is not grievance-based, right? If you're going to be violent with somebody, it's typically because you have a grievance with them, unless it's sort of violence for sport or violence because you're a psychopath and you like to kill people just for, no reason. But most of it's pretty much grievance-based. And those inspired or motivated by foreign terrorists. These actors are increasingly exploiting online forums. Like what? Like Discord or Locals or Twitter or Facebook or Gab or what else? Parler? All right. Online forums, very dangerous. And what are they doing there? They're spreading extremist narratives. You see that? They're also promoting violent activity. So we're going to take a look at what these violent extremist narratives are. Such threats are also exacerbated by the ongoing global pandemic. See that? Including grievances over public health measures and perceived government restrictions. And so this is pretty important here, this word perceived. They're going to tell us that, what are we talking about here? Are they grievances over actual public restrictions, or are they over perceived government restrictions? Because those are two different things. If people are talking about the perceived government restrictions that are not actually in effect, that's a separate conversation from the actual restrictions that are in effect. So he's talking about the perceived government restrictions, but we don't also know what that means, because these government restrictions are dynamic. They keep changing. The goalposts keep moving all the time. It used to be that you could just get the vaccine and you were good to go. Don't have to worry about it again. But then started to see these breakthrough cases and started to see other people transmit it. Now you got to put your mask back on. And so all of the restrictions are constantly moving around. It's not a steady target. So he's going to be telling us now, this is concerning, that people have some issues with government restrictions, whether they're real or perceived. So I want to take us back to this concept that there are problematic religious holidays, that this is all now a concern because leading up to 9/11 and these religious holidays, this could be troubling. Let's take a look at some of these holidays. And so I thought to myself, well, I'm just a, Catholic boy, I don't remember in my upbringing any violent Catholic religious holidays that might make me want to spring out. But I'm not, I haven't dabbled in all of the other religions. Here is from diversityresources.com. They gave us a list of all the religions. So in August, we should be concerned about pagans and the Wiccans, but August 1st already passed. The Islamic New Year started on August 10th, but that came and went. We have Roman Catholics. That was yesterday. Feast of Assumption. There was no Catholic activities there that I knew of. Now in September, we got a lot of dates. The Jayan, I think, is a religion. We have Jewish Rosh Hashanahs in September, so we might have to be concerned about that. On 9/11, we have the Coptic Orthodox Christians. They have their Coptic New Year, which is a feast day when both martyrs and confessors are commemorated in the church. So I'm not sure if the Orthodox Christian Coptics are going to become problematic, but they do share an anniversary with 9/11. The Jews are back again. Yom Kippur, 9/16. Brace yourselves for that. Could be trouble. We have 9/21. The Jews again. Sukkot is a day that commemorates the years the Jews journeyed into the desert, so that might be a problem. Hindus, obviously, very, very, very troubling. 9/20. The pagans again. The pagans and the Wiccans are back. And then we get back to the Islamic groups here on 9/28. In October, same thing. The Hindus and the Islamic again over there. And then we get to November, and I'm not really seeing much. We have the pagan and the Wiccans. The Christians have All Saints Day. The Rastafarians in November, maybe they're going to be the troublemakers, the Rastafarians, or the Hindus, or the Baha'i. Birthdays. We've got birthdays celebrating. And so I don't know what they're talking about. The Sikhs are coming in on 11/19. Okay. I don't know what they're talking about. I think everything is, looks pretty standard to me. I'm not real sure what religious holidays they're talking about that might be so problematic, but let's take a look in and dive in a little bit further. All right, here we've got additional details. They say through the remainder of 2021, here's what we've got. We've got racially or ethnically motivated violent extremists. And so we've got RMVEs. See this here? We've already talked about several other of these on this channel. We talked about DVEs, domestic violent extremism. We also talked about HVEs, homegrown violent extremists. And then, of course, we know that John Brennan was talking about libertarians as being problematic. So these people are either racially or ethnically motivated extremists, and they're also government or anti-government, anti-authority violent extremists. So we've got two new categories, REMVEs, and then we've got GAAVEs. So a lot more extremists coming out. Could be racial, could be ethnic, could be anti-government, could be anti-authority. Wow. So all of those groups are now going to remain national threats. They may seek to exploit the emergence of COVID-19 as a rationale to conduct these attacks. And they're also talking about pandemic-related stressors that have contributed to the societal strains, which is very interesting because the government basically caused all of those. As I note right here, all caused by government mismanagement. Now, they're also saying that Al-Qaeda is stepping things up. And recall, this was on Friday, right? Leading up to the anniversary of 9/11, Al-Qaeda is already reorganizing itself on the Arabian Peninsula. They actually put an English copy magazine out there, the first in over 4 years. So they have this new magazine called Inspire Magazine. That's now out. Now, despite all of these warnings, they are telling us that there are no credible or imminent threats that have been identified currently at these locations. But you still need to be bracing yourself for it nonetheless. Foreign and domestic threat actors. Who are these people? They include foreign intelligence services, so foreign nation states that have intelligence services. We also have international terrorist groups that are going to be involved. But then we get over to the DVEs, right? This is the same category that we've already heard a lot about, domestic violent extremists. They're going to be amplifying these narratives and calling for violence. They do this on multiple online platforms that we don't have defined for us. So I'm asking, is it Parler? Is it Getter? Is it Twitter? Is it Facebook? Is it Gab? Is it whatever Mayorkas just says it is? Does it change? What are we looking for? They're saying that they're associated with DVE ideologies, which again, I don't really know what that means. Domestic violent extremists. It's such a broad category that it can mean anything. They're talking about that they're being associated with those ideologies or conspiracy theories about perceived election fraud and the alleged reinstatement, and then responses to, once again, anticipated restrictions over COVID cases. They're saying that they derive inspiration from these various online communities, and they're using particular messaging platforms, things like Telegram and Signal and VPNs. If you're going to be sort of maneuvering around some of the data, they're going to be using Tor. They're going to be using all of this information to just hone in on you to make sure that you're not that dangerous, because it's trouble now. Al-Qaeda's reorganizing now over on the Arabian Peninsula. On Friday, they were doing that. Now, what are they doing now that Kabul has fallen? All right, we have some more here from the rest of this bulletin. Law enforcement has expressed concerns that people are sharing false narratives. And that these conspiracy theories will gain traction in mainstream environments. So they're really worried that people might start to, identify an alternative explanation, consider that to be the truth. Maybe it is. And maybe people start actually believing it. It gains mainstream adoption. It also says that a lot of these conspiracy theories have been amplified by the Russians, by the Chinese, and by the Iranians. And so I'd like to know specifically what different conspiracy theories are there that they are saying about the origins of COVID-19, because we know that we've talked about it a lot here on the channel, the difference between the lab escape theory and the natural origin theory. Mayorkas here, through the Department of Homeland Security, is telling us that the Russians, the Chinese, the Iranians, they're all involved in it, that they're sowing discord. Nation-state adversaries are spreading around conspiracy theories about the coronavirus and about the effectiveness of the vaccines. That's what he says specifically. Amplifying calls for calls of violence. So if they are doing those things, what are they spreading? What is the problem? Well, DHS is on it. This is what they're going to be doing to respond. They are telling us here that they're going to identify these calls. We don't know how they're going to do that, whether they're going to use warrants, whether they're going to use the FISA court, whether they're going to be monitoring people who are traveling overseas. What different buckets of people are they going to put into this analysis? Now, they're not going to tell us, obviously, because it's the Department of Homeland Security, and they've got a strong interest in making sure that their mechanisms, their investigatory powers are not revealed so that people can't reverse engineer those things. But still, this is a very, very broad spectrum bulletin. It encompasses a lot of behavior that might otherwise be constitutionally protected. And so if they're going to be telling us that they're going to be monitoring this stuff and identifying all of the different potential problems here, we need to make sure, somebody needs to make sure that this is not improperly encroaching on protected, legitimate speech, protected, legitimate government activity. You don't just get to be the Department of Homeland Security, and just get to pass these bulletins without somebody putting some pressure back on the other direction. What are you talking about? Evaluating calls for violence. What does that mean? What types of online activity are you going to be investigating? What is disinformation here? You say it's the spread of disinformation. What is that? Okay, disinformation is a little bit different than misinformation. Misinformation is information that's wrong and it's being spread around, not for nefarious purposes. Disinformation is information that is necessarily being spread around for nefarious purposes. It's wrong, they know it's wrong, and they're spreading it around anyways. So what is that? Who are they saying is doing this? Conspiracy theories and false narratives. Is it actually disinformation? Are those false narratives actually intentionally wrong disinformation? Or is it misinformation? Or is it accurate information? The gatekeeper of misinformation and disinformation is going to be able to control that gate regardless of the information it's gatekeeping. They're also talking about suspected threat actors. Have no idea who those are. DHS continues to encourage the public to maintain awareness. They're asking local law enforcement officials for open lines of communication with federal partners. They want authoritative sources of information to be out there and available to debunk and preempt false narratives. Okay. Again, nobody knows what that means. More broadly, they're going to identify whatever. Okay. So you see what's going on here, how you can help. You can report the suspicious activity yourself. You can understand how to navigate the internet better, and you can respond to false and harmful narratives. But above all, my friends, make sure you're listening to local authorities and public safety officials. The government is here, and we are absolutely ready and able to help. So let's take a quick look at some questions over here from watchingthewatchers.locals.com and see what we've got for our final segment here. If there's any questions, we'll wrap those up. Looks like we have some here. Trump says, off topic, says, let's see here. Okay, we're gonna save that one for the end of the show. 1 second. We're just gonna remove. Give me 1 second. We're going to save that one. That's a good one. We're going to save it here for the end of the show. Make sure I get to it. And let me pull up this form in a different way. All right. Okay. All right. Apologies for that. All right. Sergeant Bob is here. Says Mideast crisis is the shiny red ball. That is the red herring. It's keeping our attention away from us on something else. Meanwhile, at home, they are just clamping down restrictions across the board. We have another one here from Vienticus Prime with a long one. Let's go through this. Says, we'll spend 20 years so that we can have $2 trillion memes, but spend no money on things like education, housing, health, just plain old financial stability for the average individual. Yet we're supposed to believe some BS over why people become violent. You know, people talk about the problem with mob rule, but we already live under mob rule. It's just a different definition of the mob. So I ask people, which would you rather have if you were stuck deciding between the two? Also, I want to add my little bit of wisdom or lack thereof to what you were saying about people being human beings. It's this. I find it pointless to hate people as individuals. If you're going to hate something, don't hate the player, hate the game. If you find yourself hating people, I find it's easier to try to change other people. If you're going to hate something, hate life for making all of us stupid and doing stupid things that have stupid reactions. I find that way I'm more willing to just accept people as they are and adjust myself accordingly. Yeah, you know, if you allow, I think, that inhumanity to fester in your heart, that's where it becomes kind of ingrained in you, and it sort of spreads around, and it's not a healthy. It's toxic. You don't want that to come into your life at all. Thank you for that, Vienticus Prime. It's a good comment, and I appreciate it. I'm Not Gas says, remember the Yom Kippur War? Better to deploy the FBI to the Brooklyn bagel shops. Yeah, so I'm Not Gas. Yeah, I mean, I can't even comment on it. It's too ridiculous. It's too ridiculous to comment on. Sergeant Bob says the crucifixion was pretty violent. Easter could be an issue. It could be Easter. Yeah, that's true. Forgot about Easter. But we already had Easter. It's not in the time zone. It's from August to November. So I don't know what else it could be. We have Sharon Quidney says, perceived government restrictions sounds like a line from any totalitarian dictatorship you would care to mention. There are no unnecessary or excessive government restrictions. Everything is for the public good, and you can kiss your you-know-what goodbye along with all your civil liberties and constitutional rights. That is from Sharon Quidney. Good to see you, Sharon. Let's see what else we have here. We've got I'm Not Gas says, you know, the amount of calls to violence on these forums could be cut in half if the FBI stopped Fed posting on them. I love that. Fed posting. Yeah, right? Because they're everywhere. You forgot about the white privilege holidays. You're right. I forgot about that. Labor Day, Columbus Day, Thanksgiving, Christmas. Yeah, that's right. White people. Yeah, it's just, those are days of national mourning for, I think, the rest of the country. We have a Want to Know says the Taliban leader said he wants the mausoleum to spread through the whole world. I don't like his rules at all, since most of them think the USA is number one. Do they think that? Good to see you, Want. Let's see what else. We've got another one here. It says, what about old men hair sniffers? He's killing a lot of Afghanistan people right now. I think that's talking about Sniffy Joe. We have Sharon says, watch, they're preparing the next crisis for when people get tired of the COVID stuff or it dies down so it's no longer a crisis. They have to have a crisis in order to increase their tyrannic stranglehold. That's from Sharon Quidney. We have a couple more. TOS Forever says, how interesting that for 244 years, America has these very holidays happening with the sweetness of honey and apples that have made America a success. Now we are supposed to believe DHS is legit. Doesn't this read like Marx, Lenin, Hitler rock group? Yeah, like they're forming a band. Like the Hitler and the dictators. Hitler and the totalitarians. Biden and the commies. Playing this Friday night at your local bar. Bring your Vax Pass so that you can get in. Yeah, it's troubling. We have here, Thunder7 says, Rob, don't you know that believing in God is racist? I forgot about that. If you believe in any divine being, you are a white supremacist. Rastas are racist, along with the Mennonites who preserve jam and jellies and those Catholics that venerate with the Christ the King. Arrest them all. They're clearly domestic terrorists. Hasidic and Amish communities are next on the watch list. Yeah, it's dangerous out there. Look, if you believe in God, then that means you don't believe in Dr. Fauci, because he is, to many people, our Lord incarnate. on this planet. And so, yeah, it's blasphemy. If you believe in Jesus Christ, that's like blasphemous to many people who believe in Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and AOC. They're gonna solve all of that for us. Want to Know is here, says, so if you didn't vote for a Democrat, you're a terrorist. Yeah, I think it's something like that. If you sort of don't agree with any of what the government is saying, then that is a problem. Let's see here. We've got... All right, we're going to save that for the very last. Okay, so that, my friends, was all of the questions over from watchingthewatchers.locals.com and over on YouTube. We're going to give some shout outs to everybody who's chatting away over there. No doubt, I'm Not Gas. We have JM Shanahan 44, haven't seen that name before. Speech Unleashed. We have many others. Pinky 2 in the house. On YouTube, we're chatting to Randy Holmes, GH Tube 8. We have Stace on the Case. Zulu's in the house along with James Beaver. Appreciate all of those questions, all of that love over there from all of those different platforms. If you're on Locals, I want to invite you to come and join us at our watchingthewatchers.locals.com community. You can see here we had a couple people sign up over the weekend. Big welcomes here to Deadmau5, who chimed in on the chat today, along with Refanilator is in the house. We had last week signed up. We had Jutta, M-Kit, Daversec, Shifty Shift, 503 Unlimited, Mary B, The Real Patriot, and Laura SB in the house as well. Also want to remind you that if you're a supporter at watchingthewatchers.locals.com, then you can join us, sign up at watchingthewatchers.locals.com Saturday, August 28th, 2021, 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern time. And that, my friends, is it for me for the day. I want to thank everybody for being a part of the show. Really appreciate all of the great questions, all of the thoughts. I want to remind little Miss Olivia out there that it is time to get ready for bed. You got school tomorrow. Got to make sure that you brush your teeth. Make sure that you're all cleaned up and ready for bed so that you can get some good sleep and have a nice day at school. Olivia, sleep very well, sweet dreams, and we'll see you on the next one. And that, my friends, is it from me for the day. I want to thank you so much for being a part of the show. We are going to be back here at the same time, same place, doing the same thing tomorrow at 4 p.m. Arizona time, 5 p.m. Mountain, 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. on the East Coast. Everybody, thank you so much for being a part of the program this evening. Have a tremendous evening. Sleep very well. You too, Miss Olivia. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.